Chapter 1002. Qin Wentian's calm voice rang out. His tone was even more arrogant compared to before. Could the Qi King Manor afford this price? How arrogant was this? The Qi King Manor was one of the most powerful kings in the Evergreen Kingdom Palace. Experts were as common as the clouds, and there were quite a few immortal kings among them. Any army they sent out was sufficient to suppress the entire region and become the king. The eyes of the disciples of nobility froze as they stared at Qin Wenyin. Today at the banquet, they finally got to know this man whom Princess Qing'er loved. He was incomparably arrogant. His arrogance towered up into the sky, unwilling to lower his head and willing to disregard everything. He fought against Immortal Foundation experts at the Celestial Phenomenon realm, killing Yang'an with a single sword strike. What a terrifying character. And now, even when facing an immortal king, he wasn't willing to show any weakness and even retorted. In fact, with a single sentence, he even wanted to offend the entire Qi King Manor. These disciples of nobility all admitted that they didn't have such courage and charisma. That immortal king from the Qi King Manor stared at Qin Wenyin. His eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, wanting to see through Qin Wenyin. After that, he spoke. "Who are you exactly? From your words, the person who sent you to the city of ancient emperors shouldn't be just an immortal king, right? Who is it has nothing to do with you. If you want to know, you can investigate it yourself." Qin Wenyin coldly spoke. It wasn't difficult to find out that he had the Emperor Qianbian behind him. Many people in the Eastern Ascension 13 prefectures should know about this. Even those who paid attention to the Dongshangshan Gate would know about the battle at the Dongshangshan Gate back then. It was just that the immortal realms were simply too vast. The Evergreen Kingdom wasn't the Eastern Ascension 13 prefectures after all. Although Qin Wenyin caused some commotion in the 13 prefectures, his fame wasn't strong enough to spread all the way to the Evergreen Kingdom. Only peak-level existences, immortal emperors, would be able to do so. Even immortal kings didn't have such qualifications. After all, in the vast immortal realms, there were simply too many immortal kings. "You didn't say that on purpose, right?" Mu Feng coldly asked. Qin Wenyin glanced at him and said sarcastically, "Do you think I'm the same as you? You're so useless that you only care about your identity as a disciple of nobility. Other than that, you're worthless. Not to mention disciples of nobility, I've also killed the descendants and disciples of immortal emperors. If you were outside, you would already be dead. I hope you'll remember today's lesson. Otherwise, you won't live long." After speaking, Qin Wenyin turned and departed with Little Rascal by his side. A human and a demonic beast walked out of the Qi King Manor. "Uncle, are we just going to let him go like this?" Prince Qi's crown Prince Yang'an's face was ashen as he asked indignantly. "You want to kill him?" "Sure." The immortal king at the side glanced at Yang and started as his expression turned unsightly to behold. That immortal king impolitely continued, "You are at the Immortal Foundation realm while he is at the Celestial Phenomenon realm. If you can't kill him, what qualifications do you have to leave him alive? I can't afford to lose this face." After speaking, that immortal king flicked his sleeves and directly departed. "Arg!" Yang'an stared at the departing back of Qin Wenyin as he let out a roar of unwillingness. Humiliation, anger. From today onwards, he was no longer the number 5 ranker on the Immortal Ascension rankings. Instead, he was nailed to the pillar of shame by Qin Wenyin. Everyone who saw him, Yang'an, would think of the battle today. The humiliation of that sword strike would forever follow him. If you want revenge, you better cultivate well. A voice drifted over. Yang'an clenched his fists tightly. Everyone below fell silent. They knew that the immortal king wanted to use today's matter to motivate Yang and would either be plagued by his heart demons and be unable to recover, or he would go crazy and become even stronger. Today was a tempering experience for Yang'an, and similarly, it was also a tempering experience for everyone else. So what if Qin Wenyin was a descendant of nobility? There were so many descendants of nobility, and there were even Immortal Foundation experts present. Yet, they were all smacked in the face by an outsider, ruthlessly humiliating everyone. During today's banquet, they became a foil for Qin Wenyin. Similarly, They also served as foils for Princess Qing's judgment. Why didn't Princess Qing choose a descendant of nobility? Why didn't she care about Yang An, the crown prince of the Qi king? Why did she bring Qin Wenyan to the royal palace? There was no other reason other than because Qin Wenyan was more outstanding compared to them. They initially wanted to humiliate Qin Wenyan, forcing Qin Wenyan to retreat in the face of difficulties. Yet, it was the opposite of what they wanted. Instead, they helped Qin Wenyan to shine even more brilliantly. The matter today was enough to be engraved in their hearts. However, Qin Wenyan didn't care about their feelings. He carried little rascal in his arms and returned to the Princess Chongping residence. Princess Chongping and the Scarlet-Eye Marquis were waiting for him. Smiles appeared in their eyes when they saw him returning. Awesome. Seems like that last Qing's judgment isn't bad. Princess Chongping smiled as she stared at Qin Wenyan. Evidently, she already knew what happened earlier. Not only her, there were many experts from the nobility manor in the royal palace who had witnessed what happened at the banquet. This battle should be able to shut up many people. If you aren't worthy, their descendants are even more so. The Scarlet-Eye Marquis laughed heartily. His horizons were truly broadened today. Usually, immortal kings like them wouldn't interfere in the matters of the juniors and wouldn't be too interested in them. Usually, they couldn't be bothered to interfere even if there were conflicts between juniors. However, the matter between Qin Wendian and Princess Qing had caused an earthquake in the royal palace. Hence, many people paid attention to it. Who would have thought that this would give them such a pleasant surprise, allowing them to watch a good show? It was very rare for a battle between juniors to be so fascinating. Marquis praises me too much. Qin Wendian humbly replied. Walked to the side of Qin Wenyan and asked, "Are you all right?" Qin Wenyan nodded. "It's just that little rascal was injured. That fellow Yang An actually acted to deal with him." Little rascal stretched his head out and pouted at Qin, appearing extremely adorable. "It's just a minor injury, don't worry about it." Qin rubbed little rascal's chubby body. Princess Chongping then asked, "What demonic beast is this little fellow? He looks harmless but is actually so tyrannical." "Who knows?" Qin Wendian shrugged. "All right, the two of you have a good chat. We won't disturb you any longer. After this matter, you two should be able to enjoy some peace." Princess Chongping and the Scarlet-Eye Marquis left. Qin and Qin Wendian returned to their courtyard. In the royal palace, a huge commotion arose. Many nobility experts started to investigate Qin Wendian. He said that he had killed the descendants and disciples of immortal emperors before. Was this true? What sort of person was Qin Wendian exactly? In the royal palace, voices of support for Qin Wendian began to circulate. They said that Yang En and the others had thrown away the face of the Celestial Empire's nobility manor. No wonder Princess Qing would choose Qin Wendian. It was because these so-called nobility disciples weren't even worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as Qin Wendian. Such a voice caused those descendants of nobility who had participated in the plot against Qin Wendian to lose all face, feeling too ashamed to show their faces. A few days later, news regarding Qin Wendian gradually spread to the royal palace. It was very easy to investigate Qin Wendian's background. His experiences in the immortal realms were very simple, but he had done several sensational things. In the royal palace, the name of Qin Wendian rang out once more. So it turned out that Qin Wendian wasn't only so arrogant in the Qi King manor. He had been even more arrogant in the past. Qin Wendian participated in the 100-year grand banquet of the Dongshengshan Gate and defeated all his opponents, becoming the top ranker. However, he and his fellow apprentice brothers had rejected the invitation of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor, smacking the face of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor at the Dongshengshan Gate. So it turned out that Qin Wendian truly had an immortal emperor standing behind his back. The Emperor Qianbian came here to welcome the top ranker of the immortal banquet, Qin Wendian, and fought against the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor, demanding the territory of 6 prefectures. Not only that, it was rumored that Qin Wendian had killed the personal disciple of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor, Ke Tianyi, who was also the descendant of the scarce moon immortal king. He even killed the son of the Xian Emperor, Xian Xing, and defeated the son of Zidi, Zi Daoyang. Qin Wentian's simple experience was sufficient to make any nobility disciple of an immortal empire feel inferior. Just like what Qin Wentian had said back then when he attended the banquet at the Qi King Manor. What did they count for? If this was in the outside world, he would definitely dare to kill them. He had already done such a thing before. Yang En, Mu Feng, and the others felt even more ashamed after they learned of this news. Those people who had humiliated Qin Wentian at the banquet were too ashamed to show their faces. What qualifications did they have to humiliate Qin Wentian? Nobility disciples, what did they count for? Although His Majesty didn't agree to Qin Wentian entering Princess Qing Er's residence, he didn't object to Princess Qing Er and Qin Wentian staying in Princess Changping's residence either. Could it be that His Majesty has other intentions? Everyone started to speculate about the intentions of the Chongqing the Great. Maybe His Majesty was observing the situation now. In the future, if Qin Wentian grew stronger, His Majesty might really agree to this marriage. Qin Wentian actually has a high chance of becoming the prince consort of the immortal empire. Seems like we can't afford to offend him. Many people from the nobility residence were thinking. Not all the people from the nobility residence were targeting Qin Wentian. Back then during the banquet held by the Qi King Manor, those who targeted Qin Wentian were only a portion of people from the nobility residence. In addition, the playfulness of the juniors didn't represent the attitude of the nobility residence. To the nobility residence, Qin Wentian's current cultivation base was still weak. There was no need for him to interact with Qin Wentian yet. In the library of Princess Changping's residence, Qin Wentian and Qing were flipping through some ancient books, including the experiences of the seniors. Qin Wentian especially chose to browse through many ancient books on establishing an immortal foundation, absorbing more knowledge and combining it with his own knowledge. By doing so, his chances of establishing an immortal foundation would be higher. Qing was the same as Qin Wentian. She was also preparing to break through to the immortal foundation realm. In fact, the amount of time she spent at the 9th level of celestial phenomenon was even longer and her foundation was extremely stable. Elder sister Qin, big brother Qin. At this moment, a melodious voice rang out as a beautiful figure walked into the library. Ling. Qin Wentian stared at the person who just came. She was about 15 or 16 years of age and had a lively demeanor. She was none other than the youngest daughter of Princess Changping. Big brother Qin, these are the things you wanted. Mother told me to pass them to you. Ling passed an interspatial ring to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian received it and smiled, many thanks to Princess and Ling. These were all exchanged for using immortal ranked weapons. There's no need to thank me. Since Big Brother Qin is collecting these, are you preparing to break through to the immortal foundation realm? Since Big Brother Qin is so powerful, you would definitely succeed in a single attempt. Ling smiled. Let's hope so. Qin Wentian glanced at Qing, only to hear Qing asking in a low voice, are you preparing to enter closed-door seclusion? I have no idea how long it would take for me to break through to the immortal foundation realm. If there's a chance of success, I might choose to enter closed-door seclusion for a longer period of time. What about you, Qing? You are in closed-door seclusion, I will as well. Qing mumbled. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded his head. Right now, the royal palace was quiet and there was no longer anyone looking for trouble with him. Let's break through to the immortal foundation realm in the royal palace of the Evergreen Kingdom. Chapter 1003. At this moment, Qin Wentian appeared at the cultivation platform in Princess Changping's residence. This cultivation platform was located at the peak of a solitary mountain within a residence. With a single glance, one could see the starry skies. This was the most suitable place for cultivation. As for Qing, she wasn't here. She had returned to her princess residence and was in closed-door seclusion to break through to immortal foundation. Naturally, Chongqing the Great would act as her protector. On the cultivation platform, there were 3 gigantic divine inscription diagrams inscribed by Qin Wentian. These diagrams were like sacrificial altars, flickering with resplendent astral light. Numerous runic inscriptions intersected with one another, converging at the very center of the diagrams. He, Little Rascal, and Purgatory each obtained one. After Qin Wentian finished inscribing the formation, he waved his hands as numerous mountainous yuan meteor stones appeared. Not only so, around Qin Wentian, there were also many crystalline crystals that exuded a terrifying aura. These crystals were all immortal crystals, an essential item for establishing an immortal foundation. For stellar martial cultivators, the amount of resources required to establish an immortal foundation was extremely terrifying. Qin Wentian used many immortal-ranked weapons and passed them to Princess Changping, telling her to prepare the necessary treasures for him to establish his immortal foundation. During these days, Qin Wentian had also browsed through many ancient scrolls. In addition to the knowledge he already had and the experiences of his seniors, he already had a very good understanding of establishing an immortal foundation. He also knew that this was a very long process. Mo Xie, Yang En, and Mu Feng were all immortal foundation experts that Qin Wentian had fought against before. However, Qin Wentian knew that although the three of them had immortal foundation, they had yet to fully step into the immortal foundation realm. They couldn't be considered as complete immortal foundation experts. At the celestial phenomenon realm, one's astral souls would transform into a constellation. As for the immortal foundation realm, one had to use all of their astral souls to establish their immortal foundation. Mo Xie, Yang En, and the others might have only used one of their astral souls to establish their immortal foundation. Their immortal foundation couldn't even be considered the lowest grade of immortal foundation. However, establishing an immortal foundation wasn't something that could be accomplished in a single attempt. As long as one succeeded on the first attempt, it meant that they already had one foot in the immortal foundation realm. To many people, establishing an immortal foundation was an extremely long process. Wanting to establish a high-grade immortal foundation was even more difficult. An incomplete immortal foundation expert required Qin Wentian to go all out before he could fight against them. As for a complete immortal foundation expert, even if he had only established a low-grade immortal foundation, it would still be extremely difficult for him to fight against them. This was the disparity in cultivation levels. It was extremely difficult to surpass. For immortal foundation experts, Qin Wentian had to go all out before he could fight against them. But for immortal foundation experts, even if they had only established a low-grade immortal foundation, it would still be extremely difficult for him to fight against them. This was the disparity between their cultivation bases. It was extremely difficult to overcome. Boo! Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath and stared at the sky. After which, he walked to the center of the formation and sat down cross-legged. A tyrannical aura gushed forth from him, and in just an instant, his constellation shone brightly as his astral souls shot up into the sky. Little Rascal and Purgatory were on the other two formations. They were demonic beasts and naturally had their own unique cultivation arts. There was naturally no need for Qin Wentian to worry about them. The Heavenly Hammer constellation, Great Dream constellation, Demon Sovereign constellation, Gigantic Sword constellation, and Golden Body constellation. The light from these 5 constellations simultaneously cascaded onto Qin Wentian, establishing a connection with him. Qin Wentian's perception floated upwards, following the connection. His perception arrived in the starry space and saw the 5th constellation, a constellation from the 7th heavenly layer. The golden body of the gigantic body was akin to a divinity, radiating an incomparably terrifying law energy. Each strand of law energy contained a terrifying suppressive might, and right now, it was even clearer than before. The law energy flowing within the constellations from the 7th heavenly layer is so clear and distinct. The higher the grade of the constellation, the easier it is to establish an immortal foundation. Qin Wentian was preparing to use this constellation as the foundation for the first part of his immortal foundation. He believed that it wouldn't take too long. Qin Wentian began to immerse himself in his perception. Beside Qin Wentian, Little Rascal was also sitting in a formation. He inclined his head and stared up at the sky, closing his eyes. In the starry space, beams of light cascaded down on him. Demonic beasts were different from humans. 4 powerful demonic beasts, they had the innate ability to sense constellations of the same species and absorb the energy within. In a place immeasurably far away, in a particle world, there was a towering edifice that resembled a heavenly altar. A figure could be seen sitting there, exuding an extraordinary aura. This was a young man, and his features were exactly the same as the Qin Wenyin who was separated from him by a world. He was also preparing to establish his immortal foundation, and was preparing to step into the immortal foundation realm together with his original body. In another particle world, this seemed to be a desolate particle world. The stellar martial cultivators of this world were all clad in ancient robes. In front of a great hall, countless people were gathered together as though they were on a pilgrimage. They stared at the peak of the sky, and over there, a young man could be seen sitting cross-legged. Is our king about to become an immortal? An old man with a scepter in his hand stared at the peak of the great hall. He slowly knelt on the ground, a glimmer of hope could be seen in his eyes. Behind him, numerous figures knelt down one after another, staring at the clean and neat young man sitting there. In the air, there was an expert with the demeanor of an immortal. His gaze was calm as he stared at the young man. Mengchen, you are an innately born king of the world. This time, establishing your immortal foundation is a transformation for you. Once you complete this transformation, you would surpass countless other immortal foundation characters. Your transformation would be more terrifying compared to others. I hope you can establish a saint-grade immortal foundation. That person silently mused. To many people, establishing their immortal foundation was a transformation, a sublimation. But he understood that to Jun Mengchen, establishing his immortal foundation was much more important compared to others. Not only would his cultivation base rise to a higher level, he would also be reborn anew. In the immortal realms, the Namhuang clan was a powerful and ancient clan. On a phoenix altar, a supreme beauty could be seen sitting there. The shadow of an ancient phoenix could be seen circling around her, crying out unceasingly. The shadow of the phoenix unceasingly drilled into her body. However, her beautiful eyes were tightly shut, her consciousness was already floating in the starry space. The same scene was happening to Zi Qingxian and Hua Taishu. They were currently in different locations in the immortal realms, trying to break through to immortal foundation, preparing to ascend to immortality in a single step. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. During these 2 months, Qin Wentian's figure suddenly disappeared from the royal palace of the Evergreen Kingdom. Princess Qing'er had also vanished as well. There was news circulating in the Emperor Palace that Princess Qing'er was in closed-door seclusion, attempting to break through to immortal foundation. After which, everyone knew that Qin Wenyin was also in the midst of doing so. Yang An, who had his throat slit by a single sword strike from Qin Wenyin, as well as Mu Feng, who fought against Qin Wenyin, had also entered closed-door seclusion. Just like what Qin Wenyin had guessed, the two of them couldn't be considered as complete immortal foundation experts. This was especially so for Yang An. He had only used 2 types of astral souls to establish his immortal foundation. He couldn't even be considered half-immortal foundation. Mu Feng was in a slightly better state compared to Yang An. He spent several years and had already surpassed the half-step immortal foundation realm. Most probably, he only needed a few more years to establish a complete immortal foundation. At this moment, on the cultivation platform in Princess Changping's residence, Qin Wentian's perception was still focused on the golden constellation. Streams of light flowed unceasingly into Qin Wentian's astral souls, and at this moment, a terrifying vortex appeared around Qin Wenyin. The streams of light were no longer pure astral light, but astral light formed from laws. They contained a shocking amount of energy and was currently baptizing Qin Wentian's body, flowing into his Yuanfu. This was the advantage of having a constellation in the 7th heavenly layer. The constellation itself seemed to have a clear law energy flowing within it. By connecting with such a constellation, one would be able to complete the first step of establishing an immortal foundation in the shortest time possible. The fortune stones and immortal crystals in the surroundings were being consumed at a terrifying rate, flowing unceasingly into Qin Wentian's body, transforming into a golden immortal physique. This was the most basic form of an immortal foundation. As time flowed by, all sorts of resources were being consumed at a terrifying rate. In the air, law energy also flowed unceasingly as his immortal foundation gradually took form. Resplendent immortal light shone from Qin Wenyin as a resplendent constellation appeared in and out of existence, containing the power of law energy. Qin Wenyin breathed in and out immortal light. His perception was directed towards another constellation, that terrifying King Sword. This sword didn't have any law energy flowing within it, but Qin Wenyin himself had already comprehended a trace of the law of swords. Next, he needed to focus on comprehending it, guiding the law energy from the constellation into his body. This required an extremely high level of comprehension. Qin Wenyin knew that if he wanted to establish a complete immortal foundation in one go, he would need a very long period of hard work. Breaking through to immortal foundation wasn't something that could be accomplished in a single go. He continued his seclusion, unaware of the flow of time. Cultivation in the immortal realm was the most time-consuming. The higher one's cultivation base, the slower their cultivation speed would be. Becoming an immortal before 100 years of age would already be considered a rare genius. However, being able to step into the immortal king realm within 10,000 years was already considered very impressive. After establishing an immortal foundation, every additional layer in the future would require even more effort. In the royal palace of the Evergreen Kingdom, there was a residence that was adjacent to the Emperor Palace where the Evergreen Immortal Emperor resided. In this residence, a white-robed figure stared up at the sky. The eyes of this white-robed figure were incomparably deep, as though he could see through the void. From afar, the cry of an azure luan could be heard. The white-robed figure retracted his gaze and stared at the beautiful silhouette on the back of the azure luan. "Father!" This beautiful silhouette was none other than Princess Lioli, whom Qin Wenyin had met once before. "You're back." The eyes of the white-robed figure flashed with warmth. "I heard that Qin Wenyin came to the royal palace?" Princess Lioli asked. "He has been here for quite some time now. He came back together with Qingya. Seems like it was because of your guidance back then." "Is it him?" Princess Lioli asked. The White Emperor inclined his head and stared at the sky as he laughed in a low voice. "Seems like there's no mistake." "Should we tell the Evergreen Immortal Emperor?" Princess Lioli asked. The White Emperor shook his head lightly. "Just follow the will of the heavens. Tell him that the power of man will change some things. There's no need for you to interfere, just let nature take its course." Chapter 1004. The Azure Mystic Immortal Realms were boundlessly vast. Immortal emperors were the rulers of an area, while immortal kings could be considered experts. Only immortal foundation characters could be considered to have stepped onto the path of true experts. As for celestial phenomenon, it was usually the stage for the younger generation. If one was too old and was still at the celestial phenomenon realm, their accomplishments would naturally be limited. It was already considered not bad if they could step into the immortal realm. Celestial phenomenon realm. In the perspective of the boundless immortal realms, they were merely a grain of sand in a desert, completely inconspicuous. Although Qin Wenyin caused quite a commotion in the Evergreen Kingdom Palace, he was still an insignificant character when compared to the entire immortal realms. Very few people would notice him. Hence, when Qin Wenyin and the others entered seclusion, there wouldn't be any ripples in the entire immortal realms. In the immortal realms, the strong preyed on the weak. Every day, there would be experts of different cultivation realms being born or falling. There was a matter that caused quite a commotion. A peak-stage immortal emperor named Zidi led experts to attack the myriad Devil Islands, causing a huge commotion. It was rumored that Zidi did this to avenge his son. His son Zidayang was killed by a junior from the myriad Devil Islands in the city of ancient emperors. However, how could the myriad Devil Islands be so easy to kill their way in? That place was where the strongest devil cultivators of the immortal realms gathered, and there were countless devil sects there. Some peak stage devil emperors were terrifying to the extreme, even the Violet Emperor could only return in defeat. Although the myriad devil islands were chaotic, with endless slaughter and plunder, they wouldn't allow immortal emperors of the immortal realms to step into their territory. This was an order from the myriad devil sovereign. And today, Ziti even sent people to the Evergreen Kingdom's royal palace to pay his respects to the Chongqing the Great. The Evergreen Great Emperor personally received them. In the Great Hall of the Emperor Palace, there were many nobility characters present. Outside the Great Hall, a group of figures could be seen. All of them were extraordinary characters at the Immortal King realm. This was especially so for the Immortal King in the lead. He looked extremely young, around 30 to 40 years of age, but his actual age was far beyond that. The eyes of this young Immortal King were extremely deep, exuding a tyrannical aura. Nephew Zi Daolong pays his respects to Uncle Chongqing. This young Immortal King bowed to Chongqing the Great. Junior pays my respects to Chongqing the Great. The people behind him all bowed. Although they were the subordinates of the Violet Emperor, they still had to be polite and respectful to the Evergreen Immortal Emperor. Virtuous nephew, there's no need to be so polite. How would you have the time to visit my empire? Uncle should already know that my younger brother, Daoyang, was killed by someone in the city of ancient emperors. According to investigations, the one who killed Daoyang was none other than Mo Xie from the Myriad Devil Islands. However, his ranking on the Immortal Ascension rankings is higher than Daoyang's. Even if Daoyang was ranked higher than Daoyang, his strength should be roughly the same. He must have died from a sneak attack, in addition to the fact that Daoyang was injured. Zi Daolong went straight to the point. And as for the person who injured Daoyang, according to what nephew knows, he is currently in the royal palace of Uncle's empire. You are talking about Qin Wenyan, right? I also know a little about this matter. Qin Wenyan is a good friend of my daughter. It said that in the city of ancient emperors, Qin Wenyan fought with Junior Daoyang publicly, injuring Junior Daoyang. After that, Junior Daoyang was assassinated. It's truly regretful. It's just that it's a little inappropriate for Junior Daoyang to vent his anger on Qin Wenyan. Chongqing the Great slowly spoke. The hearts of the nobility immortal empire trembled. They didn't expect that their emperor would actually speak up for Qin Wenyan. Uncle and my father are good friends and would often drink and discuss the Tao together. However, who would have thought that younger sister Qing Er would actually have a conflict with Daoyang in the city of ancient emperors? This matter is truly heartbreaking, but since Princess Qing Er and Daoyang weren't acquainted, my father and I naturally won't blame her. However, Qin Wenyan was implicated in Daoyang's death. Uncle, can you hand him over to me so that I can bring him back? Zi Daolong continued. Chongqing the Great frowned. He then replied, Nephew, no matter what, Qin Wenyan can be considered a guest of my empire. He isn't the one who killed Junior Daoyang. If there's a grudge between you and Qin Wenyan, you can settle it yourself after Qin Wenyan leaves my empire. It wouldn't be too appropriate for me to hand him over to you directly. This nephew understands Uncle's meaning. Farewell. Zi Daolong bowed to Chongqing the Great. After that, the group of them retreated out of the Great Hall. Chongqing the Great didn't try to hold them back, allowing them to leave. He then spoke, Help me send my nephew off. Someone outside replied. Not long after, Zi Daolong and his group left the royal palace. Father, Ziti directly came to our royal palace to demand for Qin Wenyan. He is getting more and more tyrannical. Chongqing the Great's son directly spoke. Chongqing the Great was the ruler of the empire. Regardless of whether Qin Wenyan was someone from the royal palace or not, since he was already in the royal palace, if Ziti came here directly to demand for Qin Wenyan, it would be somewhat disrespectful to Chongqing the Great. No matter what, Qin Wenyan was brought into the royal palace by Princess Qing Er. If Qin Wenyan was handed over to Zi Daolong, what would others say? He has always been this tyrannical. Chongqing the Great smiled, his heart was calm and he didn't mind it too much. Since Zi Daolong came to demand for Qin Wenyan, he just had to refuse. Ziti should have already guessed that His Majesty would reject him. Why did he still send Zi Daolong here to make the request? Someone frowned. Zi Daoyang's death clearly caused Zidi's mood to be extremely bad. In addition to the fact that he failed to invade the myriad Devil Islands, as well as Qing Heir's unfriendly attitude in the city of ancient emperors, Zidi couldn't remain calm anymore. Chongqing the Great stared at the air. Although the elders wouldn't participate in the battles between juniors, things wouldn't be so simple if the descendants of immortal kings and emperors died. Your Majesty, will Zidi personally demand for Qin Wenyan? Someone worriedly asked. Zidi was a peak-stage immortal emperor of the immortal realms. His strength might even be above immortal emperors. If he personally appeared, even the immortal emperors wouldn't be able to reject him. Qin Wenyan didn't kill Zi Daoyang. He is a peak-stage immortal emperor, he wouldn't dare to say such a thing. He should have handed this matter over to Zi Daolong. How serious, he actually vented his anger on Qin Wenyan. Chongqing the Great shook his head. Mobilizing Zi Daolong and several other immortal kings, this was already an extremely serious matter. To Qin Wenyan, this definitely wasn't good news. Qin Wenyan, who was in seclusion, naturally wouldn't know of this. He also didn't expect that Zi Daoyang's death would be blamed on him. Naturally, this was also because of Xiaolingyue. When Zidi investigated Zi Daoyang's death, he found Xiaolingyue who had exited the city of ancient emperors. Xiaolingyue's hatred for Qin Wenyan had yet to dissipate. Hence, she said some unfavorable things about Qin Wenyan in front of Zidi. In fact, she even said some unfavorable things about Qing Heir. Hence, Zidi didn't care about Chongqing the Great's face and directly sent Zi Daolong to demand for Qin Wenyan. Time flowed by, everything that happened in the outside world had nothing to do with Qin Wenyan. In the blink of an eye, he had already been in seclusion for over 2 years. At this moment, in the cultivation grounds of the Princess Changping residence, the mountain of cultivation resources had already been depleted by half. Qin Wentian's body glowed with the resplendent immortal light. His entire body was translucent, and his skin seemed to be rejuvenated, gleaming faintly. Within his body, there were a total of 5 yuanfu. Within each yuanfu, an immortal foundation could be seen, radiating terrifying immortal light. In the air, law energy continued to flow downwards unceasingly, growing purer and purer. But even so, other than the golden immortal foundation, the other 4 immortal foundations weren't as pure as before. Compared to the golden immortal foundation, they were still far from being perfect. Because of the multiple yuanfu, my immortal foundation is actually different from others. Qin Wenyan manifested his immortal sense as he surveyed his body. For others, they used law energy to fuse their immortal foundations into a unique immortal foundation. This immortal foundation was an immortal foundation that contained terrifying power. However, it was different for him. His immortal foundations were located in different yuanfu. How should he fuse them together? Forget it, my immortal foundation is already so distinct. In that case, I shall sever my imperfect immortal foundation and reforge it. Qin Wenyan silently mused. A terrifying tempest of law energy manifested in his body. His body was being destroyed bit by himself. If he wanted to perfect his immortal foundation, he had to sever his immortal foundation first. His immortal foundation was already sufficiently pure, but it wasn't perfect. A surge of destructive energy manifested in Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wenyan gritted his teeth. He believed that he was more suitable than others to slay his immortal foundation. Rumble! His body was being destroyed unceasingly. Qin Wenyan roared, "Sever!" As the sound of his voice faded, the destructive energy directly blasted into one of his immortal foundations. Boundless destructive might bore down on him, shattering his immortal foundation bit by bit. Pooh! Qin Wenyan coughed out a mouthful of blood. He felt his soul trembling. This pain was so excruciating that it seeped into his heart. Sever, sever. Qin Wentian's heart was unshakable. He coughed out blood unceasingly as his body was being destroyed. Luckily, his physique was perfect and he could endure it. If he didn't have a perfect physique, his body might really have crumbled apart. A low-sounding roar rang out from Qin Wentian's mouth. When his immortal foundations shattered one after another, he finally couldn't endure the pain and directly fainted. Next, he still needed to use his powerful will to reconstruct his immortal foundation. Luckily, Qin Wentian's 5 immortal foundations weren't a single entity. His golden body was already perfect and there was no need to sever it. Hence, there was still immortal energy in his body and he wasn't completely crippled. After Qin Wenyan woke up, he continued his cultivation. In the starry space, the energy left behind by the constellations grew even purer. That was the power of law energy, perfect and flawless. They flowed into Qin Wentian's body. In the blink of an eye, another half a year passed. During this half a year, Qin Wentian's immortal foundation was reconstructed. In addition, every single one of his immortal foundations was sparkling and translucent, flawless and flawless. Qin Wentian's body grew even more perfect, radiating an incomparable radiance. He sat cross-legged with his naked body, resembling a newborn infant. Every inch of his skin was like a gift bestowed by the heavens and earth. However, Qin Wentian knew that what he wanted to do wasn't over yet. It's about time to condense the next astral soul and reconstruct the best immortal foundation I can. Qin Wentian mused. His perception shot up into the clouds, heading towards the 9 heavenly layers. Right now, he was already at the half-step immortal foundation realm. He was only a few more steps away from truly stepping into the immortal foundation realm. Chapter 1005. Qin Wentian's perception entered the 9 heavenly layers. He who was already at the half-step immortal foundation realm had an even stronger perception compared to back then when he condensed his 5th astral soul. His tyrannical perception could even remain in the 7th heavenly layer for a long period of time. His perception floated about the 7th heavenly layer. He saw many strange constellations with terrifying auras. However, Qin Wentian's perception didn't stop there. He continued to extend his perception towards the starry space even further away. He wanted to try and see if he could condense a connection with the constellations in the 8th heavenly layer. If his perception could reach the 8th heavenly layer, how tyrannical would the constellations there be? Qin Wentian's heart was filled with an intense desire. As his perception continued forward, he gradually felt a terrifying pressure bearing down on him. However, as a half-step immortal foundation expert, his perception was much stronger compared to before. He was still able to endure it. Finally, he arrived at the boundary between the 7th and 8th heavenly layers. There seemed to be a supreme energy obstructing him from advancing. Rush! There was only a single thought in Qin Wentian's heart. He had to rush up no matter what. In the 8th heavenly layer, even if it was the weakest constellation, the might contained within it would be stronger compared to constellations from the 7th heavenly layer. The augmentation to his strength would be on another level. In addition, he could see the flow of law energy in the constellations from the 7th heavenly layer with a single glance. Wouldn't it be even more obvious in the 8th heavenly layer? The power of the law energy flowing through the constellations would be even stronger and tyrannical? Right now, he still didn't know if he could establish a saint-grade immortal foundation, but he had to give it a try. Boom! Qin Wenyan felt a splitting headache, as though his brain was about to explode. He gritted his teeth and furrowed his brows, carrying with him an incomparably intense will. He had even endured the pain of killing his immortal foundation. He would still succeed in breaking through to the 8th heavenly layer. His perception grew stronger and stronger, as though he was about to step into the 8th heavenly layer. Finally, his perception surpassed everything and descended upon the 8th heavenly layer. A destructive might directly bore down on him, and with a thunderous boom, Qin Wentian's mind turned blank as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. His body softly slumped to the ground as he actually fainted. Several days later, Qin Wenyan woke up. He sat up, and celestial light flowed around his body again. He raised his head and looked at the sky with a deep obsession. You don't want me to enter, but I insist on doing so. How strong are the constellations of the 8th heavenly layer exactly? Qin Wentian's perception once again extended towards the 9-heaven star river. Endless starlight sprinkled on his body. The starry sky was so beautiful, But to Qin Wenyan, he wasn't in the mood to appreciate the beauty of the starry sky. He wanted to conquer it. Within this 1 month, Qin Wenyan experienced 3 failures and fainted 3 times. His perception was so strong that he could see a single constellation. At that time, the constellation was in the shape of an ancient halberd that could shatter the heavens. Jet black light flowed around it, exuding an incomparably terrifying light. That beam of light that cascaded downwards contained a terrifying amount of destructive might. Although it's a weapon-type constellation, the law contained within it should be destruction. Qin Wentian's perception descended for the 4th time. That gigantic halberd in the 8th heavenly layer seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens. It was extremely terrifying. If he could form an innate connection with it, his attacks would naturally contain destructive might. If he could comprehend the laws of this constellation, he would be able to establish an immortal foundation of the law of destruction. When he attacked, his destructive might would be amplified, and he would be able to kill immortals and devils with boundless might. Qin Wenyan didn't have the ability to choose other constellations. But naturally, this constellation was already sufficient to satisfy him. This was a constellation from the 8th heavenly layer. He could choose many constellations from the 7th heavenly layer, but he would rather not choosing this constellation instead. In fact, when he tried to form an innate connection with this constellation, he experienced several failures. His perception was destroyed, and he was in unbearable pain. After several months of struggle, he was filled with an incomparably firm conviction. Finally, a beam of astral light cascaded down from the 8th heavenly layer, breaking through everything, landing on Princess Changping's residence, landing on Qin Wenyan. In the White Emperor Palace, a white-robed figure stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He inclined his head and stared at the sky, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying white light, as though he could see through the past and present, piercing through the heavens and earth. 8th heavenly layer. That figure mumbled in a low voice. Although his tone was calm, his heart wasn't. He retracted his gaze as though nothing had happened. He no longer stared at the sky. Right now, it has been almost 3 years since Qin Wenyan and Qin were in closed-door seclusion. The two of them had yet to exit their seclusion, and the people in the royal palace would occasionally think of the two of them. They were all wondering if the two of them would be able to succeed in establishing a complete immortal foundation, ascending to immortality with a single step and stepping into the half-step immortal foundation realm. If they truly wanted to establish a complete immortal foundation, how many years would they need? Most probably, the time required wouldn't be short. This was a process everyone had to go through in order to become an immortal. It would be best if they could ascend to immortality in a single step. If they failed even once, it would be a huge blow to their confidence, and they might even fail again in the future. Ascending to immortality in a single step, establishing a complete immortal foundation in a single breath. This was the most ideal method for stellar martial cultivators to break through to the immortal realm. Qin Wenyan condensed his constellation, opened his astral gate, established his Yuanfu, and established his astral soul. Step by step, he began to absorb the terrifying astral light from the 8th heavenly layer, and at the same time he was trying to comprehend the fearsome law energy of destruction. To establish an immortal foundation, one had to first comprehend the law energy before they could draw it into their body, using the law energy to establish a powerful immortal foundation. This was another long process. Without a firm conviction, it would be hard for one to become an immortal. Without a strong comprehension ability, it would be hard for one to become an immortal. Many people were stuck at the peak of celestial phenomenon for their entire lives. There were also many people who were stuck at the half-step immortal realm. Although they were also immortals, the disparity between them and a complete immortal foundation expert was too great. In the immortal realms, there were many such half-step immortals. Qin Wenyan had never been in closed-door seclusion for such a long period of time. He finally understood why when one reached the immortal realm, a single session of closed-door seclusion would be equivalent to an entire lifetime. For immortal foundation characters, if they really went into closed-door seclusion, it would be equivalent to an ordinary person going through a lifetime. This wasn't a lie. It has already been 4 years since Qin Wendian went into closed-door seclusion. Qin Wentian's sixth immortal foundation was established, and after the immortal slaying foundation, it was finally perfected. His immortal sense peered into his body. 6 immortal foundations were born. Although they weren't fused together like the immortal foundations of others, there was still a marvelous connection between them. Strands of law energy intersected with each other as a terrifying law energy radiated from his body, enveloping all 6 of his immortal foundations. The law energy continued to overlap as a marvelous transformation occurred. There was nothing else on Qin Wentian's body. That flawless skin, that sparkling and translucent body, was so perfect. The contours of his face were even more distinct. His demeanor was even more imposing, and he was even more handsome. This was immortality. In the immortal realm, there were fewer ugly people. Unless they were unkempt and were innately ugly, when they reached the immortal realm, their entire person would undergo a transformation. Their skin would become flawless, their demeanor would grow even more outstanding, and they would be shrouded in a halo of immortality, becoming even more handsome and beautiful. The transformation of his external appearance seemed to have reached the extreme, but the transformation within his body was still ongoing. His 6 immortal foundations glowed with immortal light, intertwining together as a transformation occurred. For immortal foundation experts, they had to establish a complete immortal foundation. Right now, Qin Wendian had yet to complete the final step. The white light flowed within Qin Wentian's body, circulating around his 6 immortal foundations. There was no law energy that could destroy it. The law energy from the 6 immortal foundations frenziedly flowed towards it as a terrifying tempest brewed within Qin Wentian's body. Boundless law energy converged together, completely infusing into the white light. Qin Wentian's immortal sense was focused on the transformation of his body as his heart pounded. It was best to establish a complete immortal foundation. Initially, one had to rely on one's own insights to establish it. However, he seemed to be an exception. Everything flowed naturally. In the external world, in the sky, the constellations in the sky, the light of law energy cascaded down on him, frenziedly flowing into his body. Qin Wendian discovered that in the center of his 6 immortal foundations, the law energy converged to form a brand new immortal foundation that was completely sparkling and flawless. This immortal foundation took on the form of a human and gradually grew clearer, resembling a divinity that had attained the Tao. It had an innate immortal body and contained a divine charm. The law energy from the 6 immortal foundation converged on it as rumbling sounds rang out. This human-shaped immortal foundation grew more and more corporeal, shining with boundless light. The 6 immortal foundations also gradually turned transparent. Although they were still sparkling and translucent, the law energy within them seemed to be circulating around the human-shaped immortal foundation. Rumble! A heaven-shaking transformation occurred within Qin Wentian's body. The 6 immortal foundations he had formed earlier were all reduced to a wedding dress. But even so, they still existed. Qin Wentian's body transformed into a terrifying vortex. All the resources in the surroundings were sucked into his body, unceasingly being devoured. Qin Wendian seemed to have transformed into a gigantic silkworm cocoon, trapped within. The remaining resources were all being consumed at a terrifying speed until one day, all the resources in the surroundings had been completely consumed, leaving nothing behind. Qin Wentian's body abruptly radiated boundless light that pierced through the sky. A phenomenon manifested in the air, as though a divinity was about to appear. In the royal palace of the Evergreen Kingdom, at this moment, many people inclined their heads and stared at the sky as a strange look appeared on their faces. What's that? The crowd only saw boundless multicolored light in the air as a phenomenon manifested in the sky. One could faintly see the silhouette of a human. This is a phenomenon manifested in the sky? The hearts of many people trembled. Some characters with nobility stepped out of their residences and stood with their hands clasped behind their backs as they stared at the sky. What did this phenomenon signify? In the Emperor Palace, the evergreen immortal emperor stood there. His gaze was also fixed on the sky, quietly observing the phenomenon that occurred. The silent royal palace of the immortal empire suddenly became lively. Many people asked their elders what this phenomenon represented. However, even for those at the king or marquis level, they had no way to give an accurate answer. What did this phenomenon signify? For a phenomenon to manifest in the sky, there must definitely be a demon-level character. Over there, it seemed to be the airspace above Princess Changping's residence. Qin Wenyan was still in closed-door seclusion, establishing his immortal foundation. Chapter 1006. Is this phenomenon caused by Qin Wenyan establishing his immortal foundation? In the royal palace of the empire, the nobility was shaken. Their immortal senses swept out, enveloping Princess Changping's residence. At this moment, Princess Changping and the Scarlet Eye Marquis were also staring at the sky, staring at the location where Qin Wenyan was at. Is it him? The Scarlet Eye Marquis mumbled. Other than him, only his demonic beast is cultivating on the cultivation platform. This phenomenon should be caused by him, and there's a high possibility that he has already established his immortal foundation. We will know once we see if he ends his seclusion or not. Princess Changping spoke in a low voice. If this is the case, this fellow is simply too extraordinary. Being able to create a phenomenon while establishing his immortal foundation, could it be that he has already established a saint-grade immortal foundation? The Scarlet Eye Marquis casually laughed, his words causing a bright light to flash through Princess Changping's eyes. A phenomenon would appear when establishing a saint-grade immortal foundation? I'm not sure, there's no record of this in the ancient records. But no matter what, since there's a phenomenon occurring in the sky, it must be something extraordinary. Seems like another immortal king was born naturally. The Scarlet Eye Marquis laughed. Qing'e was an innate immortal king, and even the lowest achievement she had would be at least at the immortal king realm. And now, Qin Wenyan had created a phenomenon after establishing his immortal foundation. His talent was even higher compared to Qing'e. At this moment, the phenomenon in the sky vanished as everything returned to normal. However, the attention of the crowd was still focused on Princess Changping's residence. On the cultivation platform, Qin Wenyan's entire body radiated an incomparably resplendent immortal light. With an intention of his will, the immortal light dissipated as he opened his eyes, gleaming with sharpness. His aura had completely changed, and his entire person exuded an immortal might. Immortal. Qin Wenyan spoke. Right now, his immortal foundation had been completely established and he had stepped into the immortal foundation realm. In addition, his foundation was incomparably stable, having a saint-grade immortal foundation and a perfect physique. To other stellar martial cultivators, when they first became immortals, the immortal foundations they established would only be low-tier mortal grade. If their immortal foundations remained like this, their future accomplishments would be limited. Mortal-grade immortal foundations wouldn't have the qualifications to step into the immortal king realm. However, this wasn't their only chance. As they continued to cultivate and their cultivation base rose, their immortal foundations would need to be constantly perfected. During this incomparably long process, their immortal foundations would grow purer and more flawless. The impurities would be constantly expelled, and the grade of their immortal foundations would slowly rise. However, Qin Wenyan was different from others. The moment he established his immortal foundation, it was already a saint-grade immortal foundation. This indicated that in the future, on his path of immortal foundation, there would be fewer detours and things would be extremely smooth. As for combat prowess, there was no doubt that saint-grade immortal foundation experts could suppress low-tier immortal foundation experts. For characters at the same level, even if they were heaven-chosen, Qin Wenyan wouldn't even need to place them in his eyes. Glancing at his surroundings, everything was completely empty. He knew that he had already prepared sufficient cultivation resources to deal with any unexpected situations. However, he didn't expect that establishing a saint-grade immortal foundation would be so terrifying. It was simply unimaginable that for stellar martial cultivators who had no background and depended on themselves to cultivate, They wouldn't even be able to gather enough resources to establish their immortal foundation. They would need to spend a large amount of time risking their lives or joining a major power. In addition, this was only the starting point of the immortal foundation realm. There were a total of 9 stages of the immortal foundation, and if one wanted to reach the peak of immortal foundation, the amount of cultivation resources needed wasn't something ordinary celestial phenomenon ascendants could imagine. This was also the reason why many immortal foundation experts had to depend on others. Without a background, they had to depend on themselves to advance step by step. A 100-year immortal foundation and a 10,000-year immortal king were all considered geniuses. The path of cultivation was treacherous, and the further one advanced, the harder it would be. Luckily for the Qin Wenyan now, this first step to becoming an immortal could be said to be perfect. Closing his eyes, Qin Wenyan didn't exit his seclusion immediately. He continued cultivating, holding the sky demon oracle bone in his hand as he guided the fiend god body refinement art. The first step Qin Wenyan took was already sufficiently powerful, but he wasn't satisfied yet. He wanted to reach the most perfect and flawless state so that every step he took in the future would be perfect. Only then would there be no bottlenecks on his path of cultivation, allowing him to advance without any bottlenecks. Others could become immortal kings in 10,000 years, but Qin Wenyan didn't want to take so long. Qin Wenyan hasn't exited his seclusion yet? The people in the royal palace discovered that there were no movements from Qin Wenyan, and they couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that he hasn't established his immortal foundation yet? Just when many people in the royal palace started to pay attention to Qin Wenyan, Yang En and Mu Feng, who were in closed-door seclusion, once again exited. Both of them had completed their immortal foundations, truly stepping into the immortal foundation realm. This caused some commotion in the royal palace. After all, it was already extremely rare for the two of them to be able to complete their immortal foundations in such a short period of time. The grade of Yang En's immortal foundation was extraordinary. Although it was only at the mortal grade, it was at the 3rd tier. Mu Feng's immortal foundation was also at the mortal grade, but it was at the 2nd tier, slightly inferior to Yang En's. Qing'e, Little Rascal, and Purgatory were still in closed-door seclusion. They wouldn't rest until they completed their immortal foundations. Today, Qin Wenyan stopped his cultivation. His body glowed with a bright light, as though he was clad in armor. Glancing to the side, Little Rascal and Purgatory were both cultivating the law energy on the heaven-devouring dome. They seemed to have reached a crucial moment in their cultivation. He didn't disturb them and continued to close his eyes. His immortal sense flowed into his sea of consciousness, and there, a tiny astral being could be seen. Now that I've already become an immortal, the amount of energy in my body is incomparable to the past. Right now, I should be able to establish several astral fragments, right? Qin Wenyan mused. His immortal sense drilled into the tiny astral being, and very swiftly, his immortal sense entered that vast space. His immortal foundation shone brightly, flowing towards the tiny astral being, following Qin Wenyan's immortal sense. The external memories won't be of much use. I need the core memories to know what my father experienced in the past. Qin Wenyan's immortal sense continued to penetrate deeper and deeper. He had once seen his parents in the memories of a constellation fragment. That indomitable man and that beautiful woman of unmatched magnificence had given everything they had to him when he was still a baby. Why did his parents do this? Why were Uncle Black and the others so cautious in their actions? In fact, they even brought him to a particle world and watched him grow up step by step. He knew that given the strength of his parents, it was sufficient for them to give him a better environment to grow up in. They didn't need to start from the bottom. Qin Wenyan's immortal sense extended into the depths as terrifying immortal energy gushed forth, gushing towards the resplendent constellation fragments. The sounds of shattering rang out unceasingly. In an instant, a booming sound rang out in Qin Wenyan's mind as scenes of memories flooded into his mind. Break, 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 break. Qin Wenyan's immortal sense seemed to have gone crazy. The immortal foundation in his body radiated boundless light, frenziedly gushing towards the tiny astral being. That tiny astral being was like a terrifying vortex, able to absorb boundless energy. 2 hours, 4 hours. Gradually, Qin Wentian's immortal foundation grew dimmer. However, Qin Wentian seemed to have gone crazy. He had to know that a single memory fragment was far from enough. He wanted to know everything. Although Uncle Black promised to tell him, right now he didn't even know where Uncle Black was. It would be more direct for him to search through the memories of his father. Finally, Qin Wentian's immortal sense retreated. Countless memories appeared in his mind. Qin Wentian closed his eyes, digesting these memories bit by bit. Countless scenes merged together in his mind. Qin Wentian seemed to have seen the growth of a young man. That was a lonely young man, a glorious palace, an ancient clan, and a majestic structure that resembled a divine temple. Qin Wentian's mind was filled with scenes of majesty that he had never seen before. Regardless of the Dongshangshan Gate or the royal palace of the Evergreen Kingdom, none of them were as majestic as this. However, that young man seemed to be lonely. He had an independent immortal palace, a majestic castle, and was the king of the younger generation. He had many servants, and these servants were all extremely powerful, loyal, and devoted, treating the young man as their leader. He was lonely because he had no companions. In fact, he didn't even have parents. These memories weren't completely connected. Hence, there were many things that Qin Wentian could only guess and deduce. This young man seemed to be a descendant of an ancient and powerful clan. However, he was merely the inheritor of a single bloodline. He had an incomparably glorious status and had an independent immortal palace that was comparable to the royal palace of the Evergreen Kingdom. However, there was only one young man. In the memories, only an old man appeared. This old man was none other than the ancestor of his young master. He brought the young man away and sent him to the same place as many geniuses of the younger generation. They cultivated together and experienced the cruelest of trials. These young men were all extraordinary, each with heaven-defying talent. Only the young man seemed to be very ordinary. Many people weren't willing to be together with him, intentionally distancing themselves from him, causing him to feel even more lonely. Only 2 young men were an exception. They were a man and a woman. They were the most outstanding among this group of young men, like kings. They were the moon surrounded by the stars, and the elders doted on them. They had extraordinary statuses and were doted on by countless people. In the fragmented memories, the youth had grown up. That handsome countenance made Qin Wentian understand that this was none other than the man he had seen in the scenes back then, his father. His father was incomparably strong and had experienced countless trials and tribulations. He grew stronger and stronger as his demeanor became more and more outstanding. He went out to temper himself, roaming the world. From a youth, he had grown into a man with an indomitable spirit that could support the heavens and earth. There were many people of the same generation who didn't get along with him and would often push him aside. However, he didn't care. He did things his own way and did what he believed in, even quarreling with some elders. He fell in love with that young woman who had once treated him very well. However, that young woman ended up together with another young man whom he viewed as a brother. They seemed to be a match made in heaven, the king of the younger generation, the envy of countless people. Although he felt sad in his heart, he still gave his blessings and the most precious gift. After that, he left alone, roaming the world alone. He met the most important woman in his life. At the instant he saw that woman, Qin Wentian's heart violently pounded. That woman was none other than his mother. In his memories, there was the first time they met. Evidently, to Qin Yuanfeng, this was an extremely precious memory. That woman was so beautiful, exuding magnificence through the generations, unrestrained and unrestrained. She treated him with disdain, yet he fell in love with her at first sight and pursued her madly. Chapter 1007. This was a beautiful memory. Qin Wentian could sense Qin Yuanfeng's happiness in this memory. Qin Yuanfeng's personality was carefree and unrestrained. When he saw the woman he had a crush on in the past getting together with his best friend and brother, he could let go of her just like that. he started to pursue the woman he loved. Qin Wentian's mother was even more beautiful when she was young. She exuded magnificence and elegance, as though the spiritual qi of heaven and earth gathered in her body. She also had an unrestrained personality, allowing Qin Yuanfeng to pursue her without wavering in the slightest. She was like a goddess. This memory of him pursuing her was also fragmented, but Qin Wenyan could sense that this memory was deeply engraved in his heart. She seemed to have an extraordinary background and had countless suitors. Qin Yuanfeng worked even harder in his cultivation, and as time passed, he often missed her. However, she seemed to have been summoned back to the clan and rarely came out. In fact, she didn't even accept Qin Yuanfeng's pursuit. These memories were all jumbled up. Qin Wenyan had to rely on himself to sort them out and adjust the sequence of the memories. The flow of time was also skipping. He felt that the next memory should have already been many years ago. Qin Yuanfeng should have already cultivated for many years and had some accomplishments in his cultivation. But even so, he was still as wanton and unrestrained as before. He couldn't let go of the goddess he was secretly in love with. Today, he barged into a forbidden ground alone, traversing numerous heavenly moats, experiencing life and death several times, all for the sake of a smile from a beauty. Finally, Qin Yuanfeng obtained the heart of his goddess. He brought her along to roam the world together, spending time together, feeling boundless joy. However, at this moment, Qin Yuanfeng's clansmen seemed to have found him. Both sides clashed. They didn't seem to agree to the two of them being together. How could Qin Yuanfeng submit? He went against his clansmen, doing things his own way. During these years, he had always been like this. Ever since he was young, he had developed a stubborn personality. He had never received any care from the elders in his clan before. How could he submit to the will of the elders? This was his love. No one could stop it. Qin Wentian's mother's clan also objected. They sent out experts to hunt them down. Not only them, many of the pursuers of the woman in the past also tried to hunt them down. Numerous heaven-shaking and earth-shattering battles occurred. Even to Qin Wentian, who was now at the immortal foundation realm, such a scene was hard to imagine. The heavens and earth trembled as ghosts wailed and wolves howled. Qin Wentian didn't know how long Qin Yuanfeng had cultivated for. He only knew that Qin Yuanfeng was very strong, so strong that it caused him to feel fear in his heart. They kept on fleeing, and there were constantly people from their clansmen who came to hunt them down. In the process of fleeing, Qin Yuanfeng seemed to have established his own power. There were also some servants from his residence who came to pursue him, fighting side by side with him. They fled to unknown places, yet they were hunted down time and time again. It was like this was their fate. But during this process, the feelings between Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Yuanfeng grew deeper and deeper. At this moment, all the memories were completely digested by Qin Wenyan. He used a lot of time to digest them. The memories were fragmented, but they seemed to be the process of Qin Yuanfeng's growth, as well as his love for his father. Qin Wenyan opened his eyes as his heart surged with emotions. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as an incomparably intense desire appeared in his heart. What happened after that? What happened exactly? Although he didn't obtain the complete set of memories, he could still deduce the sequence of events based on Qin Yuanfeng's age and experiences. Most probably, his deductions wouldn't be wrong. These were the memories of his father's growth. I still need more memories. Qin Wentian closed his eyes and continued his cultivation. Astral light cascaded down from the sky, flowing into his body. The glow of his immortal foundation grew brighter and brighter, until his immortal foundation was full. Qin Wenyan once again sent his immortal sense into the tiny astral being. At the same time, he used his immense immortal energy to blast the astral fragments in the depths of the astral being. He needed more memories to unravel this mystery. Qin Wentian's immortal sense found it harder and harder to penetrate deeper. But he did his best, pushing his immortal sense to its limits, allowing the memories to flow into his mind. When his immortal foundation was completely depleted, Qin Wenyan retreated once again and started to organize these memories. These are cultivation arts. They are temporarily useless. Qin Wenyan tossed those memories aside. These were the cultivation arts from his father's memories and were extremely powerful. However, at this moment, Qin Wenyan basically didn't have the mood to care about these. He only wanted to know what happened to his parents. After a long period of time, he finally sorted out these memories and started to digest them. These were still fragmented and incomplete memories. His parents seemed to have fled for many years. Qin Yuanfeng grew more and more mature, yet he also exuded a manly charm. His every action exuded an indescribable aura. He knew that this must have happened many years later. Today, Qin Yuanfeng's old friend, two people from his clan when he was young came to look for him. Right now, they were already husband and wife. Qin Yuanfeng treated them in a friendly manner. At this moment, that man suggested a spar. Qin Yuanfeng initially wasn't willing to agree, but the other party insisted. Qin Yuanfeng agreed and fought with that man, but he didn't use his full strength. He didn't expect that the other party would force him into a corner and fight him seriously. In fact, the more they fought, the stronger he became. At the same time, the woman whom he had a crush on when he was young also made a move against Qin Yuanfeng's wife. At this moment, Qin Yuanfeng finally unleashed his true anger. He started to fight with all his might, causing the sky to tremble and the earth to crack. This world seemed to have no way to withstand their violent battle. Beams of destructive light rained down from the sky, splitting apart the mountains and rivers, turning everything into dust. The two of them grew stronger and stronger as they fought. Qin Yuanfeng's good friend was a king among the younger generations of the clan. How powerful was he? He was like a heavenly deity, and when he fought with all his might, he was bathed in divine light. There were very few people who could contend against him in this world. He was so strong that even Qin Wenyan felt fear in his heart. Qin Yuanfeng also erupted forth with unimaginable combat prowess. He was like a supreme god of war. His strength caused his two good friends to be stunned. They actually had no way to take him down. One must know that they were the kings of the younger generations of the clan and might even become the future leaders of the clan. Their combat prowess far surpassed those of the same generation, and in the future, they would surely become supreme experts, ruling over the universe. Yet in this battle, they actually couldn't take down Qin Yuanfeng. He understood that Qin Yuanfeng must have had a miraculous encounter, and there was a high possibility that it was one of those legendary miraculous encounters. Finally, the two of them retreated. Qin Yuanfeng didn't feel happy at all. In fact, his mood was extremely depressed. However, this memory also ended here as he directly jumped to another memory. They changed locations, but ultimately, they still couldn't escape. This battle must have caused a huge commotion in Qin Yuanfeng's clan. Qin Yuanfeng's clan decided to go all out. This time around, the experts of Qin Yuanfeng's and his wife's clan found them at the same time. The experts of the older generations acted, and another heaven-shaking battle occurred. Qin Yuanfeng's wife was brought away, but Qin Yuanfeng still didn't submit. The elders invited him to return to the clan, but he rejected them outright. He left alone and announced that he was betraying the clan. Until one day, Qin Yuanfeng's age grew even older. He returned to the clan, but it wasn't because he wanted to submit. He fought a great battle with his good friend back then, who was now someone with a glorious status in the clan. The might of the battle was even more terrifying compared to the battle back then. He used unimaginable strength to defeat his opponent, and many members of his clan were willing to follow him. The choice seemed to be left to the ancient clan. Numerous experts appeared, many of them were supreme experts from the older generations. They all acted, but Qin Wenyan and some of the elders from his clan fought against them. This battle caused the buildings of Qin Yuanfeng's clan to be razed to flat ground, becoming the dust of history. This battle caused the hearts of countless people to tremble. Even those characters from the older generations had no way to take down Qin Yuanfeng. This lasted until the core characters of this ancient clan arrived. They acted against Qin Yuanfeng and carried out their judgment, heavily injuring Qin Yuanfeng. The people from Qin Yuanfeng's faction fought with all their might until the other party took out a heaven-defying treasure that could change fate. Boundless heavenly retribution energy bore down on Qin Yuanfeng, forcefully extracting the supreme energy from his body. That supreme character who was defeated by Qin Yuanfeng landed on the other side of the treasure, bearing the brunt of Qin Yuanfeng's power. Upon seeing this scene, the people from Qin Yuanfeng's faction all went crazy. They disregarded everything and fought to the death. But it was useless. They were also subjected to the judgment of that treasure. Their energy was being stripped away, the judgment of fate. Qin Wentian's body involuntarily trembled. Many of these memories were soundless. Only a small portion of the memories could be heard. He had no way to know what exactly happened. But when he saw Qin Yuanfeng's bloodline transforming into a heavenly river and being stripped away, when he saw Qin Yuanfeng's incomparably powerful rune bone being forcibly taken out, when he saw Qin Yuanfeng's body being torn apart, and even when the memories in his mind were stripped away, a terrifying killing intent gushed forth from Qin Wenyan. However, at this moment, Qin Wenyan saw Qin Yuanfeng laughing maniacally. It was a laugh of despair. After that, a dazzling beam of light flashed as his body exploded. Everything vanished like smoke. It was like he had self-destructed. After that, his memories completely vanished. Qin Yuanfeng was no longer here. How could he still have any memories? Kill! Qin Wenyan roared in rage, his voice shaking the heavens and earth. He inclined his head, his eyes were scarlet red as his killing intent towered up to the clouds, terrifying to the extreme. That was a life of legend, a life filled with trials and tribulations. That was a life of loneliness, but also a life of heroism. Had all of this really come to an end? I still have my memories. Father didn't die, he definitely didn't die. Qin Wenyan clenched his fists tightly as an intense obsession filled his heart. He wasn't born yet. He knew that his father's self-destruction was only to destroy everything, including his father's cultivation. But he definitely wasn't dead yet. The memories of the past were still vivid in his mind. His father and mother were together, hugging him, giving him everything they had. That must be the story after that, a second life. Chapter 1008. Father. Qin Wenyan inclined his head and stared at the sky. It was as though he wanted to see Qin Yuanfeng's silhouette in the boundless starry space. He had to flee for his life endlessly, being hunted down. How unfair was fate! He relied on himself to stand at such a height, defeating the person who had always been the king of his clan since he was young. But in the end, his bloodline, body, bones, and even his soul energy were all extracted. Qin Yuanfeng could only die. He had no way to know what his father had experienced exactly, but these memories were definitely the core memories. From these core memories, he could already deduce the essence of Qin Yuanfeng's life. This included the loneliness of his youth, the hazy love he had for his father, the bone-deep love he had for his father, the betrayal of his good friends and brothers, and the encirclement of the supreme ancient race. Qin Yuanfeng didn't seem to be lonely at all. The people of his bloodline were willing to die for him. His strength bestowed a noble soul to them. All of them wanted to stand up to the heavens and earth, yet they were all cruelly suppressed. Those people knew the path to death was a dead end, yet they still chose to die. They disregarded the price and fought alongside Qin Yuanfeng, for the sake of that proud and mighty body of his. Qin Wenyan felt that the death of his father most probably had something to do with the young king of his clan. Hence, his father went to battle, using his strength to tell others that he could defeat the king they chose. Father, you must still be alive, right? Qin Wenyan clenched his fists tightly. Back then, his father had fled to many places. He must have arrived in a particle world and fought to the death. Thinking back to the scene in his memories, he guessed that his father might have moved to a new place to live. Maybe, father has long planned everything. He knew he wouldn't be able to escape and would be captured. After that, he must have reunited with mother and hid in a particle world. This was why Uncle Black and the others were so low profile. Qin Wenyan mused, filled with intense anticipation. He kept reminding himself that his father was still alive in this world. Who? Qin Wenyan inclined his head and spat out a turbid breath. The anger in his chest was about to erupt forth. Calm down. Qin Wenyan drew in a deep breath and warned himself. His father's strength was so powerful, unexcelled in the world. When he was young, he already killed so many people that even immortals and devils wept. When he was at his peak, he even dared to return to the god race and fought until the heavens and earth turned dark. Now that he established a saint-grade immortal foundation, he had a perfect starting point. He had to constantly remind himself to grow stronger, stronger, stronger. However, he was destined to walk down this path step by step. His state of mind had to be stable. He wanted to be like his father, able to support the heavens and the earth. He finally understood why his parents named him. Ask the heavens, who would be the master of the ups and downs. Let's see if we can find other memories. Qin Wentian's immortal sense gushed into the tiny astral being once again. He broke through many shallow layers of memories, but these were all scattered and messy memories and weren't the core memories. With so many astral fragments here, it was clearly impossible for him to completely assimilate all of them. Qin Wentian could only withdraw his immortal sense. Now, I can only wait for Uncle Black to tell me. He definitely knows what father has experienced. After that, I will be able to connect all these memories together and I will know everything. Qin Wentian silently mused. He was unable to calm his heart for a long time. The impact of the memories this time around was too great, to the point where the joy he felt when he established a saint-grade immortal foundation had completely vanished. The immortal foundation realm, this was only the starting point of his path. He would be the same as his father, standing at the peak of the ancient races. Stabilizing his breathing, after a long time, Qin Wentian finally regained his composure. He closed his eyes as his immortal foundation glowed with a bright light. The law energy from the starry space cascaded downwards as Qin Wentian started to cultivate to replenish the energy in his body. He wanted to temporarily seal these memories away and use them to motivate himself to move forward. 10 days later, Qin Wentian finally stopped his cultivation. He stood up and glanced at Little Rascal and Purgatory only to see that they had undergone a transformation as well. Qin Wentian's entire body glowed with golden light as immortal might gushed forth, exuding an incomparable might. As for Purgatory, terrifying flames blazed around her, as though she was a true purgatory in the mortal world, exuding terrifying might as well. Both of them had stepped into the immortal foundation realm, becoming greater demons, demon immortals. Qin Wentian stepped out as he soared up into the air. This time around, he was in seclusion for close to 5 years. It was simply too long. Qin Wentian didn't expect that establishing an immortal foundation would be so difficult. No wonder for those with mediocre talent, they might never be able to establish a complete immortal foundation in their entire lives. In Princess Changping's residence, Qin Wentian left the cultivation platform. Many people had a bright light in their eyes when they saw him. The phenomenon back then was still fresh in their minds, and they all suspected that it was a phenomenon that appeared when Qin Wentian established his immortal foundation. And now, Qin Wentian finally exited seclusion. Big brother Qin, you've exited seclusion. Did you step onto your immortal path? A beautiful figure walked over. This person was none other than Princess Changping's daughter, Ling. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded at Ling. Really? Big brother Qin established his immortal foundation? A look of joy appeared on Ling Er's face. It wasn't easy to establish an immortal foundation in one go. Qin Wentian nodded again. In the past, there was a phenomenon in the sky. There was a towering light and there was even a divinity in the air. Big brother Qin, was it because you established your immortal foundation? Ling Er asked again. I'm not sure about that. Qin Wentian shook his head. At this moment, Princess Changping and the Scarlet Eye Marquis also appeared here. They stared at Qin Wentian, their gazes seemingly wanting to see through Qin Wentian. Right now, Qin Wentian was clad in a simple long robe and appeared even more extraordinary compared to the past. His demeanor was even more perfect and he was incomparably handsome. It was as though anyone could tell with a single glance that he was an elite. Ling, alas, just look at how handsome Big Brother Qin has become. You should know that he has already established his immortal foundation. Is there a need to ask? Princess Changping rolled her eyes. Ling had a mischievous look on her face as she scrutinized Qin Wenin. Indeed, he was much more handsome than before, exuding a transcendent aura. Not bad, establishing your immortal foundation in less than 5 years. Also, the grade of your immortal foundation shouldn't be low. Qing'er hasn't exited seclusion yet, let's prepare a banquet for you first. The Scarlet Eye Marquis laughed. Men, prepare an immortal banquet to congratulate virtuous nephew Wentian for establishing his immortal foundation. Someone obeyed and left. It wasn't good for Qin Wentian to reject the Scarlet Eye Marquis' good intentions. He could only reply, "Many thanks, Marquis. Come, let's go and drink a few cups." The Scarlet Eye Marquis didn't put on any airs of nobility. He took a step forward and placed his arm around Qin Wentian's shoulders as they walked together, resembling a pair of uncle and nephew. During the banquet, Qin Wenin seemed to be absent-minded, as though he had something weighing on his mind. "Wentian, what are you thinking about?" The Scarlet Eye Marquis could tell that Qin Wentian wasn't in the right state of mind. Qin Wentian laughed. He lifted his wine cup and shook his head, just thinking about some things. "Nothing much, Marquis, please drink." The Scarlet Eye Marquis drained his cup of wine. "You have already become an immortal. What are your future plans? Do you need me to bring you out to temper yourself?" "Many thanks, Marquis. However, I still have some matters I need to handle first. I will wait for my demonic beast companions for a while longer. If they can finish their closed-door seclusion within a short period of time, I will bring them along with me. But if they can't, I might have to leave first and leave them to Qing'er to take care of." Qin Wentian replied. "You don't intend to wait for Qing'er?" Princess Changping smiled as she stared at Qin Wenin. "No, I don't know when Qing'er will finish her closed-door seclusion." Qin Wentian smiled and shook his head. He knew that Qing'er wanted to follow him. However, Qin Wentian also understood the Changqing the Great's thoughts. It was true that the current him didn't have the strength to protect Qing'er. This was especially so after the memories of his father. What sort of character was Qin Yuanfeng? Even so, it was so difficult for him to be together with the person he loved. That's fine as well. Princess Changping's eyes flashed with a deep meaning. Seems like Qin Wentian did have something weighing on his heart. At this moment, the people in the royal palace all received the news that Qin Wentian had exited his closed-door seclusion. They were all curious if the phenomenon back then was caused by Qin Wenin. "Princess..." At this moment, the butler came to report. "The Crown Prince of the Qi King Manor has brought some people here to pay his respects." "Oh? He still has the face to come?" The Scarlet Eye Marquis stared at Qin Wenin and smiled. "Let them in." "Yes." The butler retreated. An instant later, Yang En and his group appeared. Yang An's aura gushed forth ferociously. Right now, he has already completed his immortal foundation and his strength was incomparable to the past. His entire body shone with immortal light, and the instant he saw Qin Wenin, his battle intent towered up into the sky. He then coldly spoke, "Qin Wenin, come out and fight." Princess Changping and the Scarlet Eye Marquis glanced at the elders beside Yang En. Their hearts were as clear as a mirror. Seems like these fellows treated Qin Wentian as Yang An's whetstone, using Qin Wentian to temper Yang En. This way, Yang En would be able to work harder. Even if they were defeated, they didn't mind it. They wanted Yang En to remember this humiliation. Naturally, they also wanted to probe Qin Wentian's current strength. Qin Wentian also understood this point when he saw the experts beside Yang En. He glanced at Yang En with indifference in his eyes, filled with disdain. After that, he turned his head and quietly drank a cup of wine. He didn't look at Yang En and only spoke to Princess Changping and the Scarlet Eye Marquis. "Princess, Marquis, I will go and cultivate first." Princess Changping nodded. Qin Wenin stepped out and directly soared up into the air, completely ignoring Yang Enu. Yang En only felt a great humiliation. Qin Wenin simply couldn't be bothered to fight with him. Boom! A violent hurricane gushed forth as immortal might gushed forth from Yang En. With a thunderous boom, he directly rushed towards Qin Wenin. Numerous terrifying immortal sabers slashed out, lacerating the void, incomparably tyrannical. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with coldness. He abruptly turned and took a step out, causing the heavens and earth to rumble. Yang An only felt his immortal foundation trembling violently. Qin Wenyan waved his hands as immortal light flashed. His arms seemed to be clad in fiend god armor, directly shattering Yang An's attack. With a thunderous boom, his palms directly grabbed onto Yang An's neck. The fiend god palm was unblockable. Yang An howled in rage as green veins popped out on his face. He was incomparably ashamed. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with coldness. Wanting him to temper Yang An? Fine, he will grant Yang An's wish. His other palm blasted out, slamming into Yang An's body. Cracking sounds rang out unceasingly as Yang An screamed in misery. His immortal body was on the verge of shattering. How dare you! A figure as quick as lightning descended. The other experts all soared up into the air, only to see the Scarlet Eye Marquis roaring, "How dare you all!" This roar was like thunder, causing the immortal foundations of everyone to tremble. In the next instant, the Scarlet Eye Marquis stood in the air, blocking everyone. "Isn't this your request?" The bodies of everyone trembled. They didn't expect that even after Yang An completed his immortal foundation, he would still be so weak in front of Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan directly grabbed onto his neck and attacked. This was simply too ruthless. "Are you even worthy?" Qin Wentian's eyes stared at Yang An, as though he could see through his soul. With a ferocious flick of his arm, Yang An's body slammed into the ground as Qin Wenyan turned and departed. Chapter 1009. After Qin Wenyan turned and left, the people of the Qi King Manor all turned ashen. Yang An had a complete immortal foundation, yet he couldn't even withstand a single strike. They were both at the immortal foundation realm, but the disparity between them was so great. How could Qin Wenyan be so powerful? Yang An, numerous figures appeared before Yang An. An old man had a heavy expression on his face as he spoke. His bones are shattered and his immortal foundation is cracked. What a ruthless attack! Are they trying to cripple Yang An? As he spoke, he stared at the departing back of Qin Wenyan as his countenance turned extremely cold. Courting your own humiliation and blaming others? The Scarlet Eye Marquis snorted coldly. Your Qi King Manor is truly laughable, finding someone to challenge and temper Yang An. Do you think he is a fool? Not breaking his immortal foundation is already a sign of mercy. Do you really think he won't be able to do so? The people of the Qi King Manor were speechless. They didn't expect the disparity between the two of them would be so great. Yang An was directly captured with a single strike. Earlier, Yang An's tyrannical attack had truly landed on Qin Wentian's arm. Qin Wenyan lifted his arm and smashed it out. Qin Wentian's arm was like an indestructible armor, completely disregarding Yang An's attack. One could only say that the strength of the two of them weren't even on the same level. The people of the Qi King Manor are getting more and more useless. Taking the initiative to issue a challenge and wanting to gang up on me? What a disgrace. Friend, if you dare to come here again to cause trouble, don't blame me for being impolite. Princess Changping sat there as she spoke in a cold voice. The people of the Qi King Manor could only suppress their anger and bring Yang An away. After they left, Ling sighed in admiration. Big brother Qin is so powerful. Did he really just establish his immortal foundation? Immortal foundations are also divided into different tiers. For the same immortal foundation, there are 6 tiers and 3 grades. Even if both of them have just established their immortal foundations and are at the first level of immortal foundation, a mortal grade immortal foundation would have no way to contend against a king grade immortal foundation. In addition, your big brother Qin might have already established the legendary saint grade immortal foundation, something that only appears once every 10 million years. Big brother Qin really established a saint grade immortal foundation? Ling Er's beautiful eyes flashed with a bright light. Back then, other than him, there shouldn't be anyone else who could cause such a phenomenon. I'm guessing that it should be a saint-grade immortal foundation. If he fought against Yang An, most probably his immortal foundation would directly suppress Yang An, insta-killing him, invincible in the same realm. Princess Changping's eyes flickered with fluctuations. Establishing a saint-grade immortal foundation right after stepping into the immortal foundation realm was simply too rare. Under the baptism of the saint-grade immortal foundation, Qin Wentian's immortal might grew stronger and stronger. His body, bones, and meridians would also be perfected after the baptism of the saint-grade immortal foundation, allowing him to suppress opponents on the same level as him. At this moment, a long cry rang out. Everyone turned their gazes in the direction of the cultivation platform, only to see a red light shooting up into the sky, resembling a world of purgatory. There were auspicious clouds in the sky, and the silhouette of the vermilion bird was faintly discernible. It was extremely terrifying. The vermilion bird established his immortal foundation. The two demonic beast companions of that fellow are both extraordinary. Princess Changping sighed. Qin Wentian was only at the celestial phenomenon realm, yet he already had two powerful demonic beasts as his companions, accompanying him as he grew. Even in the royal palace of the Immortal Empire, it was extremely rare to find a pure-blooded vermilion bird. Other than the purgatory vermilion bird, the other vermilion bird must also be an extraordinary greater demon. At this moment, Qin Wentian walked to the cultivation platform and saw Purgatory transforming into a demonic immortal. Its body grew even larger, blotting out the sun, resembling a supreme ferocious demon. The color of its feathers also changed, each and every one of them exuded a tyrannical flame aura, resembling the flames of Purgatory, extremely terrifying. Purgatory let out a long cry, as though it was extremely excited. After that, its body shrank and with a flash, it appeared in the airspace above Qin Wentian, hovering above his head before finally standing on Qin Wentian's shoulder. Qin Wentian could clearly sense its excitement. Qin Wentian stretched out his hand and patted its head, his mood improving for some unknown reason. Although during these few days, he tried his best not to think about his parents, he still felt extremely depressed in his heart. Roar! At this moment, a golden light illuminated the sky. Little Rascal transformed into a terrifying greater demon, its body incomparably gigantic. With a roar of rage, the shadow of a greater demon appeared in the air, terrifying to the extreme. Golden runes circulated around its body, resplendent and resplendent. The smile on Qin Wentian's face grew even more radiant. These two fellows seemed to be in a competition, transforming into a greater demon one after another. Little Rascal let out a few heaven-shaking roars before he finally stopped. After that, his body shrank once more, and the towering might he exuded earlier instantly vanished without a trace. Little Rascal reverted back to his harmless appearance. His entire body trembled as he leaped towards Qin Wentian, transforming into a beam of white light that shot into Qin Wentian's embrace. He then inclined his head and stared at Purgatory. Luckily I made it in time, or this Bao Bao would have lost all face. His voice was still as immature as ever, as though he would never grow up, exuding a sense of cuteness. But the moment he transformed into a greater demon. Purgatory's eyes flashed with a smile as it stared at Little Rascal. I can't be bothered to lower myself to your level. A melodious voice rang out, causing Qin Wentian to start. Little Rascal blinked his big eyes, looking extremely adorable. This voice was extremely melodious, containing a hint of femininity. It was actually the voice of a female. Female? Little Rascal blinked. Purgatory's silhouette flickered as she rushed out. A bright light flashed as a beautiful young lady exuding an aura of heroism appeared before Qin Wentian. She was clad in purgatory armor, exuding an aura of vigor and vitality. Her figure was extremely alluring, exuding a sense of seductiveness as well as a sense of cold, causing people to not dare to look directly at her. Little Rascal, are you courting death? Purgatory's voice was filled with coldness. Qin Wentian was also stunned when he saw this. He didn't expect Purgatory to transform into such a cold and seductive woman. Little Rascal rubbed his eyes, as though he was very shocked. After that, he glanced at Qin Wentian and spoke in a baby voice. A female vermilion bird is indeed more ferocious than a female tiger. Qin Wenin rapped Little Rascal on its head as he scolded in a low voice. You are already a demon immortal, yet you are still so mischievous. Yeah, this Bao Bao is also a demon immortal. Purgatory, why don't we get together? Who knows, we might be able to give birth to a supreme greater demon. Scram. Purgatory was so angry that her body was trembling. Her beautiful eyes had a look of grievance in them as she stared at Qin Wenin. Master, you have to control him. Purgatory, you can just call me Big Brother Qin. Qin Wenin perspired. No. I was born because of you, I will naturally refer to you as my master. Purgatory seemed extremely stubborn as she insisted. Qin Wenin rolled his eyes. In that case, I order you to refer to me as Big Brother Qin. Purgatory pouted, looking extremely aggrieved. Upon seeing her aggrieved expression, Qin Wenin had nothing to say. He could only nod his head. Fine, up to you. Thank you, master. Purgatory smiled happily. Qin Wenin stared at his two companions as the depression he felt during these days gradually dissipated. Seeing them growing up and accompanying him all the way, Qin Wenin felt extremely happy. Let's go, it's time for us to leave. Qin Wenin spoke. Little Purgatory, bring me along. Little Rascal's silhouette flickered as he leaped into Purgatory's embrace, rubbing his head against her ample bosom. Purgatory had a look of disdain on her face, wanting to shake him off. However, Little Rascal refused to budge. Purgatory could only say, shameless. This Bao Bao wants to rest. Little Rascal laid there comfortably. Purgatory had a look of disdain on her face. Princess Chongping and the Scarlet Eye Marquis saw that Qin Wenin had returned. When they glanced at Purgatory and Little Rascal in her embrace, smiles involuntarily appeared on their faces. Princess, Marquis, Qin Wenin thanks you for disturbing us for these years. Now that these two fellows have established their immortal foundations, it's time for me to leave. Are you really not going to wait for Qing'er? Princess Chongping smiled as she stared at Qin Wenin. After Qing'er establishes her immortal foundation, I hope that Princess can pass on a message to her that I will come back to look for her. No matter where I am, my heart will never change. Qin Wenin spoke. Okay, let him send you off. Princess Chongping glanced at the Scarlet Eye Marquis only to hear the Scarlet Eye Marquis asking, which region do you guys want to go to? I will send you there through the teleportation array. The Eastern Sage 13 Prefectures? Where does the teleportation array lead to? Qin Wenin asked. The teleportation array in the Royal Palace can send you to many regions in the immortal realms. In addition, it can adjust the direction of the teleportation array, making it easier to travel. Which prefecture do you want to go to? The Scarlet Eye Marquis stepped out. Qin Wenin followed behind him, heading towards the teleportation array. Cloud Prefecture. Qin Wenin nodded. No problem, I should be able to send you to the Cloud Prefecture. As for the exact location, that would depend on your luck. The Scarlet Eye Marquis replied. Don't worry, I have an immortal ranked weapon on me. Once I reach the Cloud Prefecture, I will naturally head there. Qin Wenin replied. As they spoke, they arrived at the teleportation array. Only those with nobility in the royal palace were qualified to use it. This teleportation array leads to the Eastern Sage 13 Prefectures. Let me adjust the direction for you. The Scarlet Eye Marquis walked towards a teleportation array. The teleportation array here was extremely intricate. It must have been created by a Grandmaster-ranked spatial formation expert. Come on up. The Scarlet Eye Marquis spoke. Qin Wenin stepped onto the teleportation array while the Scarlet Eye Marquis stepped out. An instant later, the array was activated as a terrifying spatial light shot up into the sky. Qin Wenin nodded to the Scarlet Eye Marquis. Let us meet again in the future. Let us meet again in the future. The Scarlet Eye Marquis laughed. As the sound of his voice faded, a bright light flashed as Qin Wenin vanished. In the Cloud Prefecture of the Eastern Sage 13 Prefectures, in the vast wilderness outside the worry-free city of the Jiangling country, a couple could be seen fleeing for their lives. The man was covered in blood and his countenance was as pale as paper. "Shuer, you leave first. I will delay them or none of us will be able to escape." The man stared at his beautiful girlfriend as his heart ached in pain. Most probably, it would be hard for him to escape this calamity. "No, if we die, we will die together." The girl shook her head. "Shueru, listen to me. That bastard doesn't want you to die." The eyes of the young man turned red. The robes of the girl beside him were torn apart, revealing her fair skin. Upon hearing this, the girl paled. "In that case, I will kill myself." The young man roared. The girl's eyes were filled with tears. At this moment, in the air, a blinding beam of light shot over. After which, a gate opened up in the sky as a man and a woman walked out. The man was handsome while the woman was seductive, exuding a heroic aura. One could tell with a single glance that they were extraordinary characters. The two who appeared were none other than Qin Wenin and Purgatory. The spatial fluctuations dissipated and they stared at their surroundings, not knowing where they were. Chapter 10:10. The two below saw Qin Wenin and Purgatory directly soared through the air as shock filled their hearts. At this moment, Qin Wenin directly appeared before them and asked, "The two of you, may I ask which country of the Cloud Prefecture this is?" "Jiangling country." The young man replied. He stared at Qin Wenin. "Senior, I've offended an enemy and I know I won't be able to live. Can I beg Senior to spare the life of my lover?" After he spoke, he only saw Qin Wenin staring at him. Those deep eyes of his seemed to be able to see through him, knowing all his thoughts. However, he still didn't lower his head. He knew that this young man before him might very well be an extraordinary character. Although this young man looked young, it was only because of his high cultivation base. As long as this young man nodded, he and Shueru might have a chance to live. Jiangling country. Qin Wenin was somewhat taken aback. When he first entered the immortal realms, this place was none other than the Jiangling country. Qin Wenin naturally understood that this young man wanted his help. If he nodded, it was impossible for him to save only his junior apprentice sister. However, he wouldn't be bothered about such things. He then asked, "Which city of the Jiangling country is this place close to?" "Worry-free city." "This place isn't too far away from the worry-free city." The young man spoke. A strange light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. When he first arrived in the immortal realms, he landed in the worry-free city of the Jiangling country. He even accepted a disciple there, Qin Feng. After that, because of Qin Feng's elder sister, Qin Qing, he offended the city lord of the worry-free city and crippled the young master of the Jiang clan of the Cloud Prefecture, Jiang Quang. After that, he was recognized in the Drifts Now city. The Jiang clan and the other major powers wanted to deal with him, but he borrowed the power of the Drifts Now master and raised the Jiang clan to flat ground. After so many years, the blue seas turned into mulberry fields and he actually returned to the worry-free city coincidentally. Right now, the Cloud Prefecture was already under the control of the Emperor Qianbian and was no longer under the control of the Dongshengshan Gate. The Jiangling country was naturally the same as well. At this time, a group of cultivators riding eagles came from behind, led by a young man. His aura was a little unstable and he seemed to be injured. His face was slightly pale and his eyes were cold. He stared at Qin Wenin and said coldly, "You still want to leave?" The man's and Shueru's expressions changed greatly, and they only looked at Qin Wenin. "Why did you become enemies?" Qin Wenin asked the man. "The Golden Armor sect is here on business. Those who have no business here, scram immediately." The young man in the lead shouted coldly, and the experts instantly surrounded them. The Golden Armor sect. How familiar. Qin Wentian mumbled. Back then in the worry-free city, he became enemies with a disciple of the Golden Armor sect, Zhaoyun. Her master was the Grand Elder of the Golden Armor sect, and at that time, a strand of immortal sense appeared, wanting to take his life. At this moment, the white-robed immortal king, Bai Wuya, appeared and destroyed the strand of immortal sense with a single glance, bringing him back to the heavenly talisman realm. "Senior, I'm not acquainted with this man. In the inn he spoke disrespectfully and my senior brother acted to teach him a lesson. I didn't expect him to be someone from the Golden Armor sect. The young woman, Shueru, had a pleading look in her eyes as she stared at Qin Wenyin. This was how things were in the immortal realms. The strong were tyrannical, bullying the weak. Those who offended them would be in dire straits. The immortal realms were boundlessly vast, and although there were many immortal kings and emperors, this was because the numbers were too high. In the worry-free city, Immortal Foundation experts already stood at the peak of the pyramid. The Golden Armor sect was a power with Immortal Foundation experts. Their disciples would naturally be tyrannical and tyrannical. Is this so? Qin Wenyan stared at the young man from the Golden Armor sect. Do you still want to stand up for the Golden Armor sect? Sir, you better reconsider. That young man stared at Qin Wenyan. His eyes brightened when he saw purgatory behind Qin Wenyan. However, when he sensed that the auras of these two were extraordinary, he didn't dare to act recklessly. He smiled. I'm the son of an elder of the Golden Armor sect. If you are willing, we can be friends and visit my Golden Armor sect as a guest. Qin Wenyan saw through the young man's intentions with a single glance. He then spoke to the young man and Shueru, you guys can leave. Many thanks, senior. The two of them knew that they were saved. They bowed to Qin Wenyan and prepared to leave. Impudent! That young man coldly roared. You are truly courting death. Kill him and leave the woman for me to enjoy slowly. He wanted to see who in the territory of the worry-free city would dare to go against his Golden Armor sect. He had an immortal sense in his body. Even if Qin Wenyan was a peak-level celestial phenomenon ascendant, he had no fear. Yes, young master. The auras of the experts from the Golden Armor sect gushed forth. Many of them unleashed their constellations. The cultivation base of the young man who was fleeing wasn't weak, he was a powerful ascendant. Hence, those who were chasing after him were all extremely powerful. A cold light flashed in Qin Wenyan's eyes. He stepped out as a series of crisp sounds rang out. Qin Wenyan directly stepped through the crowd, instantly leaving this area. That young man who was fleeing seemed to have sensed something. He turned his head back and after that, his movements halted as his gaze froze. He could feel his heartbeat quickening. Senior brother! Shueru was shocked when she saw that the young man had stopped. She turned her head as well, only to see Qin Wenyan slowly walking away. Those from the Golden Armor sect all fell to the ground, their countenances pale. Their cultivations were all crippled. As for the young man in the lead, he had already lost all signs of life. He was already a dead man, even his immortal sense couldn't be activated. How powerful! The young man's heart pounded violently. Even his sect didn't have such a terrifying expert. What cultivation realm is that? Shueru's body trembled slightly. That handsome young man didn't even act? Immortal! The young man spoke. This young man was an immortal. In the worry-free city, Qin Wenyan and Purgatory strolled about. His immortal sense extended outwards, enveloping a radius of a few hundred miles. Back then when he came from a particle world, his cultivation base at the celestial phenomenon realm was too weak. He didn't even have the chance to take a good look at this city. In a small city in the immortal realms, the number of people with weaker cultivation bases far exceeded the number of people with stronger cultivation bases. Celestial phenomenon ascendants were at the peak. But because the population of the worry-free city was simply too vast, there were simply too many ascendants. For those who had just broken through to Immortal Foundation, they could already dominate an entire city, becoming a city lord or establish a sect. Under the envelopment of his immortal sense, many scenes appeared in Qin Wenyan's mind as countless voices played out. Emichim? At this moment, Qin Wenyan's brows twitched as an inn appeared in his mind. After that, his immortal sense focused and drifted towards the inn, landing on a table of people there. I think the Battle Sword sect is in for it this time around. Who asked them to be targeted by Xieyu? But then again, the members of the Battle Sword sect are truly extraordinary. Each of them is a young elite. That Lu Bingyu is as cold and arrogant as a plum blossom. Xieyu most probably has evil intentions towards her. That's right. I heard that the young master of the city lord, Xieyu, is currently cultivating an evil art. His father is a demon and Xieyu has an evil nature. It's rumored that many pure and innocent females have already been ruined by Xieyu. The Battle Sword sect just arrived here and they have already offended many people in the immortal realms. I'm afraid they are going to be annihilated this time around. I heard that they came from a country bumpkin world. No wonder they don't understand the rules of the immortal realms. Battle Sword sect. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. After that, he stepped out and an instant later, his silhouette directly appeared in the inn. The two people who were conversing suddenly saw two silhouettes appearing beside them. Their eyes narrowed as they stared at Qin Wenyan and Purgatory. This young man and woman both exuded an extraordinary aura. Most probably, they were the young masters of major powers. Young hero, do you have any instructions for us? One of them clasped his hands to Qin Wenyan, extremely polite. In the immortal realms, the most taboo thing was to offend others. It was very easy for them to be killed. For those who were weak, they had to keep a low profile. Bring me to the Battle Sword sect. Qin Wenyan stared at him as he spoke. The Battle Sword sect came to the immortal realms? That person had a difficult expression on his face. Qin Wenyan furrowed his brows, his gaze as sharp as swords. That person only felt cold sweat dripping down his back as an immense pressure bore down on him. Young hero, right now the son of the city lord Xieyu has mobilized many people to surround the Battle Sword sect. How would I dare to go? After you point me in the right direction, I will naturally allow you to leave. I won't mistreat you. Qin Wenyan calmly spoke. That person lowered his head. All right then. He knew that Qin Wenyan was already being polite by not forcing him. How could he not know what's good for him? If he died, he might not even know how he died. Qin Wenyan directly brought his body away, moving with incomparable speed. That person pointed out the direction for Qin Wenyan until Qin Wentian's immortal sense located the Battle Sword sect. Qin Wenyan then released that person and gave him a handsome reward. Within the worry-free city, there were many mountains and ancient peaks. This was where the Battle Sword sect was located. At the foot of the mountain, on a gigantic boulder, a figure as proud as a plum blossom could be seen standing there. She had an ancient sword strapped to her back and her long robes fluttered in the wind, exuding an aura akin to that of an immortal. At this moment, the woman frowned. Her eyes were like sharp swords as she stared in the distance. After that, she saw two silhouettes walking over. When she clearly saw the silhouette of the young man in front of her, her beautiful eyes instantly froze as a strange light flashed within. It was as though she didn't dare to believe her own eyes. The young man gradually got closer. Although his steps seemed slow, he soon arrived before the woman. He smiled at her. You don't recognize me anymore? Lu Bingyu still hadn't regained her senses. Qin Wentian's aura seemed to have changed again. He was even more handsome and had traces of a transcendent aura. What happened? Why did the Battle Sword sect move to the immortal realms? Qin Wentian asked. He was more concerned about the situation in this particle world. Lu Bingyu glanced at Qin Wenyan before glancing at Purgatory behind him. After that, she spoke, let's talk on the way back to the sect. Anichim. Qin Wenyan nodded. He walked to Lu Bingyu's side as they walked towards the sect entrance. Lu Bingyu continued, after you left, Senior Medicine Sovereign became the strongest expert in this particle world. However, the Medicine Sovereign Valley had no intentions of claiming hegemony. Many major powers rose up, but because of your suppression back then, the Star River Association went silent and even vanished without a trace. But just a while ago, the Star River Association mobilized experts from outside into our particle world, using tyrannical methods to suppress the world. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with coldness. It was the Star River Association again. How are Senior Medicine Sovereign and Qingqing? Did they come to the immortal realms? Qin Wentian asked. Lu Bingyu stared at Qin Wenyan as she slowly shook her head. Senior Medicine Sovereign sent many outstanding characters out of our particle world. Mo Qingqing refused to leave. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. She knows that the immortal realms are too vast. Lu Bingyu spoke. She wants to wait for you. Chapter 10-11. Qin Wentian's body trembled. He was speechless for a moment. That's right, the immortal realms were simply too vast. Qingsheng thought that it would be hard for her to meet with Qin Wentian again. In the vast immortal realms, even for immortal kings and emperors, it wouldn't be easy for them to headhunt someone. He promised that he would return. Hence, Qingsheng wasn't willing to leave the particle world. She wanted to wait for him to return. Qingsheng will be fine. Qin Wentian silently mused. After settling the matter with the Battle Sword sect, he would immediately head to the particle world to look for Qingsheng. He couldn't wait a single moment longer. Are you doing well in the immortal realms? Lu Bingyu was silent for a moment before her cold voice rang out. Seeing how extraordinary Qin Wentian's aura was, and he had a beautiful woman accompanying him, he should be doing well. Most probably, his strength had also improved greatly. Given his talent, he should have already stepped into the peak level of celestial phenomenon. Everything is fine. Qin Wentian nodded. What about you? I'm doing well as well. Lu Bingyu nodded. The two of them didn't speak as they entered the mountain gate. Bingyu, you're back. A figure walked over. When he saw Qin Wentian, his gaze froze as he smiled. Junior brother Qin. Senior brother Ji. Qin Wentian called out. So it turned out that this person was none other than Ji Feishue. I didn't expect to meet junior brother Qin here in the immortal realms. Ji Feishue laughed. Quick, everyone will definitely be very happy to see you. As Ji Feishue spoke, numerous figures flashed over. These were all people from the Battle Sword sect. Qin Wentian saw many familiar faces. Senior brother Lin Shuai, Sword Sovereign Ling Tian, Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, and even Yi Lingshuang was here. Wentian. Yi Lingshuang had a look of joy on her face when she saw Qin Wentian. She took a step forward and appeared before Qin Wentian. She held onto Qin Wentian's hands, feeling extremely excited. She didn't expect to see Qin Wentian in the immortal realms. Sister Lingshuang, did foster father come? Qin Wentian asked Yi Lingshuang. Father, he has no way to abandon Yi. Yi Lingshuang shook her head. As the human emperor of Yi, it wasn't appropriate for Yi Qingyun to leave alone. Yi Lingshuang was a disciple of the Battle Sword sect. It was only normal for her to be here. Wentian. Numerous silhouettes walked over. Qin Wentian stared at these familiar faces as a smile appeared on his face. Kid, why are you here? A voice drifted over. Momentarily, the crowd parted, only to see the old ancestor of the Battle Sword sect appearing. Qin Wentian smiled at him. Old fellow, can I come? You're still so arrogant. The great ancestor walked over with his hands clasped behind his back. He walked to Qin Wentian's side and raised his hand to strike at Qin Wentian. Suddenly, a violent sword might swept out, heading straight for Qin Wentian. Testing me? Qin Wentian laughed. Back then, this undying old man wanted to take him as a disciple, but he didn't agree. He had always been harboring a grudge in his heart. Qin Wentian lifted his palms and blasted out a gigantic palm imprint. The two palm imprints collided together as a violent shockwave gushed forth. The great ancestor was forced back a step, yet Qin Wentian was still standing there with a smile on his face. This caused the great ancestor to glare at Qin Wentian in anger. Good fellow, no wonder you are so arrogant. You should have already reached the peak of celestial phenomenon, right? To think that you can fight to a draw with me. The spectators all laughed. The great ancestor was clearly forced back, yet he said it was a draw. However, everyone gave him face and didn't expose him. Old fellow, I've already shown mercy. Qin Wentian impolitely laughed, his words causing the great ancestor to explode in anger as he cursed, Bullshit. Ha! The spectators all laughed. At the side, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness felt an unbearable feeling in her heart when she saw how powerful the great ancestor was. Back then during the sword trial on the grassy reed, she said that she wanted to take Qin Wentian as a disciple but was rejected by Qin Wentian. She even mocked him. But now, Qin Wenyin had already surpassed her. Not only for Qin Wenyin, there were many geniuses in the battle sword sect whose talent was extremely high. Right now, they were all gradually catching up to the elders. Junior brother Qin, you should give the great ancestor some face. Lin Shuai joked. Qin Wenyin turned his gaze over, staring at Lin Shuai, Duan Han and the others as he nodded his head in acknowledgement. Although his strength had grown, he still didn't have the slightest bit of prestige. Brat, you came at the wrong time. The old ancestor of the battle sword sect spoke. Our location is already surrounded. We offended the people from the City Lord Manor, and they will soon kill their way here. What happened exactly? Qin Wendian asked. When we established our sect in the worry-free city, we were instantly targeted by some major powers. When the disciples of those powers roamed around the worry-free city, they dragged the son of the city lord Xieyu along with them, intentionally provoking us. Ji Feishue and Bingyu fought with them and caused trouble for us. It's all my fault. Lu Bingyu lowered her head. What does it have to do with you? They are going too far. Ji Feishue was unconvinced. Who's right and who's wrong is no longer important. Just prepare yourself for the upcoming battle. The City Lord is an immortal foundation expert. He most probably wouldn't participate in this storm. It was those young experts who wanted to stop us, saying that they wanted to destroy our battle sword sect. Little brat Qin, what do you plan to do? The old ancestor asked. Old fellow, no matter what, I'm still a member of the battle sword sect. Don't tell me you want to chase me away? Qin Wendian smiled. Fine, the battle sword sect has never misjudged you. Regardless of victory or defeat, we will withdraw from the worry-free city. The old ancestor seriously spoke. Prepare for battle, I've received news that they have already set off. Yes, old ancestor. Everyone nodded as their expressions turned heavy. This battle would be extremely difficult. Okay, disciples of the battle sword sect, prepare for battle. The old ancestor roared. Momentarily, the disciples of the battle sword sect all soared into the air. Instantly, the whistling of swords filled the air as numerous youths stood on their swords, fighting for the sake of their sect. A smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face when he saw this scene. No matter where the battle sword sect was, it would always be the battle sword sect. In front of the battle sword sect, the disciples of the battle sword sect could be seen standing on a gigantic boulder. Qin Wendian was here as well. Beside him, Lin Shuai, Ji Feishue, Lu Bingyu and the other outstanding disciples stood separately. Behind them were the sword sovereign and the other elders. Their gazes were fixed on a gigantic demonic beast, and a group of young men could be seen flying over. The person in the lead was none other than Xieyu from the City Lord Manor. There were also many other disciples from the major powers of the worry-free city. All of them respected Xieyu as their leader. Prepare for battle. Sword chi gushed forth from the disciples of the battle sword sect. Lu Bingyu's eyes were ice cold as she stared ahead. The cold beauty Lu Bingyu is indeed here. There are many beauties in the battle sword sect. A disciple laughed uproariously. That master of Lu Bingyu isn't bad. I like the older ones, they have more flavor. One of the young men spoke in an unbridled manner. If the battle sword sect is willing to allow all the females to surrender and return with us, we might spare your sect. Someone intentionally mocked, causing the killing intent of the disciples of the battle sword sect to soar up into the sky. A black mass of experts rushed over. At this moment, someone exclaimed in shock, this little beauty is so seductive. I've never seen her before. As that person spoke, his gaze landed on Purgatory, who was standing beside Qin Wenyin. Purgatory's figure was fiery and extremely seductive. She was clad in a fiery armor that accentuated her voluptuous figure. In addition to her immortal-like aura, as well as her cold and arrogant countenance, she instantly attracted the attention of many. The battle sword sect is truly a good place. Xieyu, between this beauty and Lu Bingyu, who do you like more? That person stared at Xieyu, who was beside him as he spoke. However, at this moment, Xieyu was acting strangely. The smile in his eyes vanished and he didn't even glance at purgatory. He was staring at Qin Wenyan instead. Qin Wentian's long robes fluttered in the wind as he stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. This caused Xie Yu to feel an indescribable sense of panic in his heart. Why was he here? Was he pretending not to know anything? But at this moment, Qin Wentian's gaze was already locked onto him, causing Xie Yu's countenance to turn increasingly unsightly. Xie Yu, what's wrong? The young man beside Xie Yu noticed something was wrong with Xie Yu as he asked. This matter has nothing to do with you, right? Xie Yu stared at Qin Wenyan as he braced himself and spoke. Upon hearing Xie Yu's words, everyone turned their gazes onto Qin Wenyan. Those around Xie Yu felt somewhat puzzled. Xie Yu knew this man? Could he be a disciple of an immortal ranked power? The people from the Battle Sword sect also turned their gazes onto Qin Wenyan. Xie Yu actually knew Qin Wenyan? Only to see Qin Wenyan standing there, staring at Xie Yu as though he wanted to see through Xie Yu. This caused Xie Yu to feel even more panic in his heart as his countenance grew increasingly unsightly. Why was this bastard's gaze so sharp? Get your parents to come and see me. Qin Wenyan spoke, his words causing everyone to stare at him in shock. Xie Yu's parents were both immortal-ranked characters, yet they wanted to come and see him? Brat, are you tired of living? A young man coldly laughed. The experts behind Xie Yu all radiated coldness, while the people from the Battle Sword sect stared at Qin Wenyan in astonishment. However, Qin Wentian's gaze was fixed on Xie Yu. Upon seeing the changes in Xie Yu's expression, Qin Wenyan knew that although Xie Yu was in a small city like the Worry-Free City, because Xie Yu was the son of the city lord, he should know what status he was speaking to him with. Fine, I will bring my men and leave immediately. Just when everyone thought that Qin Wenyan had gone mad, Xie Yu suddenly admitted defeat, causing everyone to be dumbfounded. They felt that this was a little surreal. Those experts that Xie Yu brought were all thinking, who was this man? Who said you can bring your men and leave? Qin Wentian coldly spoke. I told you to inform your parents to come and see me immediately. Did you not understand? The people from the Battle Sword sect stared at Qin Wenyan in shock. They discovered that at this moment, Qin Wentian's aura had changed. He was no longer as amiable as when they first met. The current Qin Wenyan was extremely tyrannical. His words were orders, no one could defy him. What's going on? The people from the Battle Sword sect were initially prepared for a great battle, yet they didn't expect things to turn out like this. Lu Bingyu also stared at Qin Wenyan, her beautiful eyes filled with bewilderment. Yes. Xie Yu actually admitted defeat when faced with Qin Wentian's domineering attitude. He nodded and replied, I will immediately inform them to come here. After speaking, he took out a talisman treasure and directly crushed it. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to the people around him, tell your elders to come here immediately. If not, all of you will be in great trouble. Chapter 10-12. Who is he exactly? Everyone stared at Qin Wenyan. They all knew what sort of personality Xie Yu had. He was extremely evil and his parents were both Immortal Foundation experts. His father, Xie Shi, was a demonic lion and was the hegemon of a particle world. His mother, Bu Yinyu, was the lord of a city. Xie Yu had always been domineering in the Worry-Free City. But now, this young man wanted his parents to come see him, and Xie Yu actually obeyed. From the looks of it, the identity of this young man must be extraordinary. These arrogant young men all quietened down, feeling trepidation in their hearts. They didn't dare to speak as recklessly as before and transmitted their voices to Xie Yu, trying to find out the identity of this young man. However, Xie Yu refused to say anything, causing them to be extremely annoyed. The people of the Battle Sword sect were all puzzled. The old ancestor stared at Qin Wenyan as he silently mused, this fellow's talent is extraordinary. Seems like even in the immortal realms, he has extraordinary accomplishments and might have joined an immortal ranked power. If not, Xie Yu wouldn't be so afraid of him. Wenyan, you joined an immortal ranked power? Yi Lingshuang directly asked. You can put it that way. Qin Wenin was someone from the heavenly talisman realm, but everyone assumed that he was a disciple of the Emperor Qianbian. Seems like he's from a major power in the Jiangling country, able to suppress the city lord of the worry-free city by a level? Yi Lingshuang laughed. This younger brother of hers was truly powerful. Qin Wenin noncommittally laughed, his words causing Yi Lingshuang and the others from the Battle Sword sect to set their hearts at ease. Seems like with Qin Wenin around, nothing would happen to their Battle Sword sect. Since Xie Yu was so afraid of Qin Wenin, it was clear that he was intimidated by Qin Wentian's identity. The great battle that had been brewing for a long time had suddenly come to a halt. The mighty experts floated in the void, seemingly at a loss as to what to do. Qin Wenin seemed to have become the only focus of attention. Everyone please step back. Leave the matters here to me. There won't be any problems. Qin Wenin spoke to those from the Battle Sword sect. The experts from the Battle Sword sect all nodded and stood at the back. Only Lu Bingyu and a few others remained standing on the gigantic boulder. After a long while, a shocking aura swept over from afar. Everyone looked up and saw two powerful figures coming together, landing directly in front of Xie Yu. City Lord. Everyone slightly bowed to the female City Lord. Bu Yenyu's gaze didn't even glance at them, she was staring at Qin Wenin. As expected, it was him, he actually returned to the worry-free city. Back then, Qin Wenin had heavily injured Jiang Kuang of the Jiang clan in front of her. At that time, no one knew that he would become the top ranker of the Dongshengshan Gate. Even when the Dongxing Heaven Emperor wanted to accept him as a disciple, he was rejected. This matter was only known to her after the Emperor Qianbian unified the Cloud Prefecture. Maybe the people of the worry-free city weren't very clear about this, but as the city lord, she was naturally very concerned about it. Many thoughts flashed through her mind. Qin Wenin could be considered to have a grudge with them before. Was he here today to punish them for their wrongdoings? City lord of the worry-free city, Bu Yenyu, pays her respects to young Lord Qin. Bu Yenyu bowed to Qin Wenin. This scene shocked everyone. An Immortal Foundation expert, the city lord of the worry-free city. She referred to Qin Wenin as young Lord Qin and even bowed to him. What status did this young man have? Bu Yenyu, you failed to educate your son properly. How should we deal with him? Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness as he tyrannically spoke. The experts from the Battle Sword sect felt their hearts pounding. Qin Wenin was still so domineering even when facing an Immortal Foundation expert? Immortals represented supreme authority in the particle world. Back then, the reason why the Royal Sacred Sect was so tyrannical, allowing those who submitted to them to prosper and those who defied them to die, was all because of the existence of immortals in the Royal Sacred Sect. Right now, Qin Wenin was alone, yet he was still so domineering even when facing an Immortal Foundation expert. This was simply unimaginable. The countenances of Bu Yenyu and Xie Shi changed. Xie Shi then spoke, "When we return, I will teach him a lesson so that he will remember this lesson." I didn't ask you. Qin Wenin glanced at Xie Shi, his eyes cold. Xie Shi's expression turned heavy, yet Bu Yenyu continued, "Young Lord Qin, how do you want me to deal with him? As the city lord of the worry-free city, you govern the entire city yet you allowed Xie Yu to act so tyrannically, suppressing the other powers, treating human lives like grass. Xie Yu should be sentenced to death. As for you, you should abdicate your position as the city lord as well." Qin Wenin icily spoke. His voice was like thunder from a clear sky, causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. This young man wanted to sentence Xie Yu to death? Not only that, he even wanted Bu Yenyu to abdicate her position as the city lord. I've governed the worry-free city for 1,000 years. Even if the Cloud Prefecture changed owners, my position as the city lord of the 81 countries would never change. Young Lord Qin wants me to abdicate with a single sentence and even wants to sentence my son to death? Isn't this a little ridiculous? Bu Yenyu stared at Qin Wenin. Who is young Lord Qin representing when speaking to me, the city lord of the worry-free city? Qin Wenin coldly smiled when he saw how domineering Bu Yenyu was. He then spoke in a low voice, "Very good. His smile was sharp and cold, causing Bu Yenyu's heart to tremble. She could faintly sense that this young man before her was extremely dangerous. Since City Lord Bu doesn't like me using my identity to speak to you, I will speak to you personally. Back then, your City Lord manner captured my friend Qin Qing and pursued me with the intent to kill. It's time to settle this debt. Qin Wentian spoke. Personal grudges? Bu Yenyu coldly spoke. Yes, personal grudges. Qin Wentian replied. Fine. Since young Lord Qin has put it this way, we might have to offend you then. Bu Yenyu's eyes flashed with killing intent. Seems like it was impossible for her to continue being the city lord of the worry-free city. What status did Qin Wentian have now? How would he allow her to live peacefully? Killing Qin Wentian would only bring about endless troubles in the future. She could only seek refuge with the major powers of the Dongshangshan Gate. As long as she had strength, so what if she didn't want the city lord of the worry-free city? All of you, scram out here! Qin Wentian roared. A rumbling sound rang out as numerous figures stepped out from the surroundings. One of them had a faint immortal light revolving around him. It was none other than an Immortal Foundation expert. Who are you? Qin Wentian asked. Governor Han Wei of the worry-free city. The Immortal Foundation expert replied. I pay my respects to young Lord Qin. From now on, you will temporarily hold the position of the city lord. Qin Wentian emotionlessly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, Bu Yenyu started laughing. Qin Wentian, you are too impudent. Even if you have immortal sense protecting you, I won't kill you. I will just capture you and send you to the Dongshangshan Gate. That way, I will be able to exchange for a good position, right? You are courting death. Purgatory coldly spoke. She stepped out as red immortal light illuminated the sky, incomparably resplendent. A scorching heat engulfed this entire space, causing everyone to be stunned. The beauty behind Qin Wentian was actually an Immortal Foundation expert. Immortal Foundation. The people of the Battle Sword sect were all dumbfounded, feeling fear in their hearts. Those young men who spoke rudely earlier were all as silent as cicadas in winter. No wonder you are so arrogant, you actually have an Immortal Foundation expert following you. However, this isn't enough. Bu Yenyu and Xieshe both radiated immortal might as they stepped out together. Xieshe roared in rage and punched out with a fist, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. It was like a fearsome lion king had appeared, rushing towards Purgatory. Purgatory stabbed out with her finger, her Immortal Foundation radiating powerful immortal might. The shadow of a vermilion bird shot out, colliding with Xieshe's attack. Her combat prowess is very strong. Xieshe spoke to Bu Yenyu. The two of them stepped out at the same time as a thunderous boom rang out. Xieshe's entire person transformed into an incomparably gigantic demonic beast, capable of devouring the heavens and earth. He directly appeared before Purgatory, wanting to devour her whole. Purgatory's Immortal Foundation radiated boundless light. In an instant, her entire body was enveloped by the shadow of a vermilion bird. Her wings flickered, exuding an incomparably demonic beauty. With a long howl, Purgatory flames gushed forth from her forehead as she blasted towards Xieshe. The two of them instantly engaged in a violent battle. Xieshe's cultivation base was at the second level of Immortal Foundation, yet Purgatory wasn't at a disadvantage when fighting against him. Every strike of hers contained destructive might, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Bzz. At this moment, Bu Yenyu's silhouette transformed into a blur, directly traversing through Purgatory. Her speed was simply too fast. Executing an immortal movement art, she instantly appeared before Qin Wentian. A powerful immortal might bore down on Qin Wentian as her entire body shimmered with white immortal saber light, akin to a pair of saber wings, slashing towards Qin Wentian. The speed of an Immortal Foundation expert was so fast that the people of the Battle Sword sect didn't even have time to react. Wentian. The countenances of those from the Battle Sword sect drastically changed. A cold smile flickered in Bu Yenyu's eyes as the saber wings slashed downwards. Chi-chi. An ear-piercing sound rang out. The saber wings slashed onto Qin Wentian's shoulder, causing a brilliant white flame to appear. There was no blood, and Qin Wentian's arm wasn't severed. He still stood there, calmly watching everything. It was just that at this moment, Qin Wentian's entire body was shimmering with resplendent runic inscriptions as a corona of light shone around him. In an instant, immortal light filled the sky, cascading down onto Qin Wenin. He was so transcendent, unexcelled in the world. The Qin Wenin at this moment was an immortal. This immortal foundation. The people of the battle sword sect were all shocked beyond compare. They stared at the scene before them. Qin Wenin actually stepped onto the path of immortality? Who? The old ancestor of the battle sword sect trembled violently. He drew in a deep breath and spoke, "The younger generations will surpass us in time, the younger generations will surpass us in time." No wonder he said that he would let me win. How can this be possible? Many people were shocked. Even if he was an immortal, Bu Yanyu was an immortal foundation expert, yet she couldn't even sever his arm with a single strike? Was the defense of his fleshly body so terrifying? Ji Feishue, Lin Shuai, Duan Han and the others all stopped thinking when they saw this scene. Qin Wenin had stepped into immortality. Lu Bingyu stared at that silhouette that was bathed in immortal light. He was like a supreme king of an era, able to look down on everything beneath the heavens. Who could even touch him? Lu Bingyu's beautiful eyes went into a daze as a sense of dejection appeared in her heart. Naturally, the one whose expression changed the most was none other than the city lord of the worry-free city, Bu Yanyu. Her attack actually couldn't move Qin Wentian? Courting death. Qin Wentian spoke. He lifted his right hand and stabbed out with a finger. A terrifying immortal light was infused into this finger strike. The distance between the two of them was too close. Bu Yanyu had no way to evade this attack. Puchi! As his finger descended, the immortal light directly penetrated into Bu Yanyu's body, directly piercing into her immortal foundation. A surge of destructive immortal light was infused into this finger strike, directly penetrating through her immortal foundation. Arg! A scream of misery rang out as Bu Yanyu's immortal foundation shattered. Chapter 10:13. This finger contained immortal might and destructive might, directly shattering Bu Yanyu's immortal foundation. At this instant, the immortal halo around Bu Yanyu dissipated. She stared at Qin Wenin in agony as wrinkles appeared on her face. Her immortal foundation was broken, her path to immortality was severed as her immortal qi dissipated. Arg! Bu Yanyu screamed in agony. Her immortal foundation was shattered by Qin Wenin and her path to immortality was severed. She didn't seem to realize that right now, her life was still in the hands of Qin Wenin. Qin Wenin waved his hand as a gigantic palm imprint directly grabbed Bu Yanyu in the air. Those experts who came with Xieyu trembled unceasingly as they stared at Qin Wenin with fear and reverence in their eyes. Tyrannical strength could easily gain the respect of others. This was the immortal realms. Before this, they initially thought that Qin Wenin only had an extraordinary status. Even Bu Yanyu thought so. But after exchanging blows, they understood that it wasn't just his status. Qin Wentian's strength could insta-kill the city lord of the worry-free city, Bu Yanyu. The experts of the battle sword sect were speechless as they stared at that disdainful back view. Killing immortals with a wave of his hand, Qin Wenin, was he already so terrifying? Before this, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was still somewhat jealous of Qin Wenin. But now that she saw that supreme silhouette, she suddenly felt a sense of desolation. She truly understood that geniuses couldn't be measured using logic. She basically didn't have the qualifications to compare with Qin Wenin. She should have long since put down the attitude of a senior. Right now, Qin Wenin had already surpassed her by too much. He was an immortal, an existence that could kill other immortal foundation experts with a wave of his hand. If this was in the past, Qin Wenin would already be a character that could destroy the sacred emperor of the royal sacred sect with a wave of his hand. But in this particle world, the sacred emperor was a supreme existence. She, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, had never thought of challenging him. How could she compete with him? What was the point of jealousy? Qin Wenyin was no longer on the same level as her. No! Xie Yu's face was as pale as paper. It was only now that he realized that his city lord mother couldn't even withstand a single blow. This made him, who was usually domineering and tyrannical, feel a chill run down his spine. It was as if he had smelled the scent of death. Roar! Xie Shi let out an earth-shattering roar of rage. However, Purgatory's combat strength was incomparably tyrannical. He had no way of killing his way to Qin Wentian's side. Bu Yinyu was tightly held by Qin Wenyin. She stared at Qin Wenyin and said, "How can this be? How can you be so strong?" Back then when Qin Wenyin was in the worry-free city, his cultivation base was only at the initial level of celestial phenomenon. Even though he obtained the top ranker of the Dongshangshan Gate, it was rumored that he was only at the 7th level of celestial phenomenon. Only 10+ years have passed, how could he have already stepped onto the immortal path? Not only that, his combat prowess had already reached such a level. She had no way to understand. Since this is a personal grudge, back then Xie Yu captured my friend Qin and wanted to gift her as a serving girl. Now, he even brought his men to kill his way here, acting tyrannically. How many innocent people have died in his hands? Why does he dare to be so tyrannical and do whatever he wants? It's all because he has a city lord mother who is willing to protect him. As the city lords of the worry-free city, how can you allow your son to do as he pleases? That Qin Wentian's palms slashed out as a beam of sword light directly slashed down. Bu Yenyu's body trembled in the air before she helplessly fell from the air. This caused Xie Yu and the people around him to feel their hearts trembling as they felt their guts shattering. Immortal Foundation experts already stood at the peak of the worry-free city. Bu Yenyu was the city lord of the worry-free city, yet she was killed by Qin Wenyin on the spot. Xie Shi transformed into a terrifying greater demon, howling madly as demonic qi engulfed the area. Qin Wenyin turned his gaze over, staring at Xie Shi as he icily spoke. "When you guys allowed Xie Yu to slaughter the innocent, why didn't you think of this day?" As the sound of his voice faded, a gigantic palm imprint directly soared through the air, aiming for Xie Yu. Xie Yu roared, turning and wanting to flee. But how could he be a match for Qin Wentian? He was instantly grabbed by Qin Wentian's palm imprint. His evil qi towered up into the sky, but that was only because no one in the worry-free city dared to antagonize him. But now, his life was in danger. His entire body trembled uncontrollably. A person like you living in the worry-free city is nothing but a scourge. Qin Wentian's palm imprint trembled as sword qi gushed forth. The crowd only saw Xie Yu's body disintegrating into dust. Immortal Foundation experts were invincible. Xie Shi and Purgatory were still fighting. Qin Wenyin saw that Purgatory was also enraged. She transformed into a Purgatory vermilion bird, and a sea of Purgatory flames surrounded her. Xie Shi screamed unceasingly. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. The Purgatory vermilion bird is Qin Wentian's demonic beast. Those from the Battle Sword sect were all stunned. So it turned out that this beautiful maiden was actually a demonic beast companion of Qin Wenyin. Even his demonic beast had already broken through to the Immortal Foundation realm, possessing towering combat prowess. How powerful! Yi Lingshuang mumbled. She stared at Purgatory before turning to the back view of Qin Wenyin, recalling the scene when she first met Qin Wenyin back then in the Battle Sword sect. Now, he was already so powerful. Beauty Purgatory is still very powerful, although she's still quite a distance away from me. Little rascal, who was in Yi Lingshuang's embrace, mumbled. His little paws started to crawl about. Yi Lingshuang already knew of his character. She directly grabbed his ear, causing little rascal to grimace in pain. "AI, a woman's heart is the most poisonous. Glib tongue, you must have learned it from that little brother of mine." Yi Lingshuang patted little rascal on his head, causing little rascal to glare at her in anger. "This Bao Bao is a demon immortal. With just you? Forget it." Yi Lingshuang spoke with disdain. Little rascal turned his head away. I can't be bothered with you. Arg! A scream of misery rang out. Xie Shi's gigantic body was enveloped by the purgatory immortal flames as his entire body started to burn. It was like a true purgatory in the mortal world, a terrifying sight to behold. Screams of agony rang out unceasingly. Xie Shi struggled madly, but very quickly, his screams died down. His gigantic body fell down from the sky, causing a thunderous rumbling sound to ring out. After that, the crowd saw Xie Shi's gigantic body disappearing bit by bit. The purgatory immortal flames would completely incinerate his body. The flames on purgatory dissipated as she reverted back to her human form. At this instant, those young men who dared to disrespect her earlier all retreated, wanting nothing more than to find a hole to bury themselves in. They actually dared to tease a powerful demon immortal that could kill Xie Shi? This was simply courting death. Staring at Purgatory's beautiful figure, although they wanted to do something with her in the depths of their hearts, they could only suppress it. Fear filled their hearts. Such a bewitching demon immortal wasn't someone they could touch. They could only look up to her in admiration. Purgatory's silhouette flickered as she quietly stood behind Qin Wenyan, as though nothing had happened at all. However, this entire space had already quietened down. Those experts hiding in the shadows didn't dare to reveal themselves. Countless gazes stared at the corpses on the ground as their hearts trembled. This was especially so for those who came with Xieyu. They were afraid that Qin Wenyan would kill them all in a fit of anger. Right now, given that Qin Wenyan was at the Immortal Foundation realm, he wasn't afraid of their numbers. In front of immortals, it was useless no matter how many celestial phenomenon ascendants there were. With his immortal law energy, he could instantly insta-kill a group of them. Qin Wenyan swept his gaze over them one by one. He then turned to the people behind him and spoke, "Seeing that you guys didn't act, I will spare you followers. You guys cripple the leaders on your own accord as a form of atonement. I will let bygones be bygones. No, young Lord Qin, please forgive us." Those young men in the lead all turned pale. The experts behind them surrounded them. Even if they were the subordinates of these young men, they were even more unwilling to offend a character like Qin Wenyan who could kill immortals with a single finger. Doing so would simply be courting death. Qin Wenyan even killed the city lord. Why would he care about them? Their lives depended on a single thought from Qin Wenyan. Do it. Qin Wenyan coldly spoke. These people would only be scourges if they were left alive. It was about time for the people of the worry-free city to learn their lesson and learn not to bully the weak and act tyrannically. A violent aura abruptly gushed forth. Those young men screamed, "Enough!" And after that, they were engulfed by the terrifying attack. The other experts stared at Qin Wenyan, not daring to move recklessly. "Let's go." Qin Wenyan waved his hands. Everyone felt as though they had been pardoned. They didn't dare to linger any longer and directly departed. Not long after, everyone was gone. Qin Wenyan turned his gaze over only to see the gazes of those from the battle sword sect all landing on him. Yi Lingshuang stood at the side, smiling at him. "Little brat, why did you hide the fact that you became an immortal from us?" The old ancestor of the battle sword sect glared at Qin Wenyan. "I already said I would yield to you, but you didn't believe me." Qin Wenyan shrugged his shoulders, becoming as harmless as ever, exuding an aura of friendliness. But right now, when everyone saw this side of him, their feelings were completely different from before. They couldn't forget the scene of Qin Wenyan destroying an immortal foundation with a lift of his hand. They couldn't forget the tyrannical side of him that shocked so many experts with a single glance. Qin Wenyan was only like this when facing them. He was already an immortal and his status was extraordinary. Even the city lord feared him and referred to him as young Master Qin. "Wenyan, what identity do you have exactly?" Yi Lingshuang smiled as she stared at Qin Wenyan, feeling extremely curious. "I was just about to tell you all about this." Qin Wenyan spoke. "Now that our particle world is being invaded, I need to rush back immediately. I will leave a strand of immortal sense on you, Sis Lingshuang. This strand of immortal sense will have its own consciousness. You guys head to the capital city of the Jiangling country and look for the Jiangling king. Tell him that it's I, Qin Wenin, who told you all to look for him. Get the Jiangling king to bring you all to the immortal Qianbian gate of the Cloud Prefecture. The hearts of those from the Battle Sword sect trembled violently when they heard Qin Wentian's words. Although they haven't been in the immortal realms for long, they knew of the 81 countries of the Cloud Prefecture. The worry-free city was just one of the countless cities in the Jiangling country. Qin Wentian told them to look for the Jiangling king? This was too crazy. What identity did Qin Wentian have exactly? Not only that, Qin Wentian's intention was to get the Jiangling king to bring them to the immortal Qianbian gate of the Cloud Prefecture. They had heard of this power before. It should be a peak power of the Cloud Prefecture. Yi Lingshuang's beautiful eyes flickered as she stared at Qin Wentian. Seems like you are doing very well in the immortal realms. Everyone in the Battle Sword sect was even more curious about Qin Wentian's identity. Wasn't he doing a little too well? Chapter 1014. The people of the Battle Sword sect had just arrived in the immortal realms for a short period of time and had always been seeking survival. Hence, in a small city like the worry-free city, it was naturally very hard for them to interact with a gigantic existence like the immortal Qianbian Gate. Worry-free city was simply too small. It was just a city in the Jiangling country, one of the 81 countries. The people of the worry-free city would also rarely mention the immortal Qianbian Gate. Leaving aside the immortal Qianbian Gate, even for some of the peak powers of the Cloud Prefecture, they would rarely mention it. They weren't at their level. Qin Wentian also didn't know how to explain. He couldn't say anything about the Heavenly Talisman realm. Strictly speaking, the immortal Qianbian Gate wasn't his sect. It was just that the Heavenly Talisman realm had a connection with the Emperor Qianbian. You guys will know when you go there. Qin Wentian smiled. Sister Lingshuang, the strand of immortal sense I left on you might need to be used in the future. Hence, this strand of immortal sense has its own consciousness and is a strand of my will. It has no offensive capabilities, but I will know everything you do. Sister, you don't mind, right? Yi Lingshuang blushed. She rolled her eyes at Qin Wentian. Sure, you are not allowed to peek at things you shouldn't see. I definitely won't. Qin Wentian nodded. This strand of immortal sense had no offensive power. It was just a strand of his will and it couldn't exist forever. It would disappear very easily and was relatively useless. However, he wanted to go to the particle world first to take a look. If the situation there exceeded his expectations, he would need this strand of immortal sense. This was also the reason why Qin Wentian wanted the people of the Battle Sword sect to go to the immortal Qianbian Gate. From Lu Bingyu's words, the situation in the particle world should be extremely serious. You can leave it then. Yi Lingshuang's lips twitched. After which, she only saw Qin Wentian closing his eyes as immortal light radiated from him. A beam of immortal light enveloped Yi Lingshuang, seeping into her body before dissipating. This was the first time Yi Lingshuang encountered such a situation. She felt a little strange as her face turned red. However, she and Qin Wentian were as close as siblings, hence she didn't mind it. Qin Wentian opened his eyes. With a wave of his hand, a few immortal ranked weapons appeared as he passed them to the old ancestor of the Battle Sword sect. Old ancestor, take these immortal ranked weapons. Sure. The old ancestor of the Battle Sword sect didn't stand on ceremony and kept it with a wave of his hand. Remember, you have to hurry to the Jiangling country lord city and get the Jiangling king to send you all to the immortal Qianbian Gate. On the way there, don't create any unnecessary problems. In the immortal realms, things like today would often happen. Qin Wentian stared at those from the Battle Sword sect as he clasped his hands to them. I'll return to my hometown first. Let's meet again at the immortal Qianbian Gate. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, he soared into the air with Purgatory following closely behind him. Farewell. Little rascal waved his claws at Yi Lingshuang. After which, a raging wind kicked up as he transformed into a golden-winged great rock that soared up into the air with lightning speed. landing at the feet of Qin Wenyin and Purgatory as he soared up into the clouds. Those from the battle sword sect started. This little rascal also became a demonic immortal? Yi Lingshuang's beautiful eyes flashed before a radiant smile appeared on her face. How can a golden qilin be a mere fish in a pond? Since we entered the immortal realms, we must ride on a dragon. When a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to the heavens. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness felt a sense of frustration in her heart. She stared at the three silhouettes of the three silhouettes, speechless. She involuntarily glanced at her own disciple, Lu Bingyu. She suddenly felt that her master might have held Lu Bingyu back. If Lu Bingyu followed a character like Qin Wenyin, her accomplishments would definitely be higher. Pack up, let's prepare to move out. The old ancestor of the battle sword sect spoke. This brat left a strand of his immortal sense on Lingshuang because he was worried that something unexpected might happen in the particle world. He can directly summon experts from the immortal Qianbian Gate over there. We mustn't waste his time. Yes. Everyone nodded. They had also guessed Qin Wentian's intentions. Qin Wentian soared up into the air. Immortal Foundation experts could break free from the restrictions of the immortal realms, reaching the void and searching for particle worlds. Gradually, a powerful surge of law energy bore down on him, causing him to feel a heavy restriction. Little rascal who was in the form of a golden-winged rock roared in rage. His golden wings flapped, breaking through everything as he soared up into the clouds. Their bodies rose higher and higher, flying for a very long time. When Qin Wenyin glanced at the ground again, he didn't know which direction was up or which was down. Just like what Sword Saintly Mubai said back then, everything is relative. That boundlessly resplendent immortal realms was boundlessly vast. As he soared higher and higher, he could see more and more places. However, everything was blurry and unclear. Finally, another shrill sound rang out. The golden-winged rock directly penetrated through a layer of restrictive energy. In an instant, the law energy vanished. Their bodies seemed to be in the boundless starry space. Before Qin Wenyin, there were many particles floating around. They seemed very close, but in truth, they were extremely far away. Many of the particles looked very small, but they were actually worlds. Little rascal, can you sense it? Qin Wenyin stared at Little Rascal as he asked. Little Rascal nodded. With a flap of his wings, he sped towards a certain direction. Particle worlds were boundless, but the perception of stellar martial cultivators was extremely strong. This was even more so after becoming an immortal. They would be able to sense the particle worlds they lived in before. Qin Wenyin could sense it, so could Little Rascal. A human and two demon immortals soared through the starry space. Qin Wenyin turned his gaze over and saw another figure flying through the air. Most probably, it was an expert from another particle world. In fact, Qin Wenyin was thinking, how many immortal realms were there exactly in the boundless starry space? Most probably, no one in the immortal realms knew about this. Only by roaming through the starry space would you realize how tiny and insignificant you are. After a long time, in the airspace above the royal sacred region, a few figures descended from the sky. The golden-winged great rock had already reverted to its original form and was in Purgatory's embrace. Qin Wenyin glanced at his surroundings. This was a city in the royal sacred region, and there were many people in the city. The gazes of these people were all staring at the two figures descending from the sky. All of them could sense that the auras of these two were extraordinary, but they had no idea where they were from. Qin Wenyin descended as his immortal sense enveloped a radius of a few hundred miles. Very soon he knew where he was. He was actually in the Grand Zhou Empire. Let's head to the sacred royal city first. Qin Wenyin stepped out, directly disappearing from his original location. Those who were staring at him all had looks of shock on their faces. What a fast speed! Who was this person? Although the royal sacred region was extremely vast, it was simply too small when compared to the immortal realms. Now that Qin Wenyin was already at the immortal foundation realm, it wouldn't take him too long to travel from the Grand Zhou Empire to the sacred royal city. The sacred royal city was as flourishing as ever, with people coming and going unceasingly. Back then, the Medicine Sovereign Valley resided in the sacred royal city, contending with the royal sacred sect for the hegemony of this place. After that, Tion led his people to destroy the royal sacred sect, and the Medicine Sovereign Valley became the new hegemon of the sacred royal city, becoming the strongest power in the royal sacred region. The Medicine Sovereign Valley should have been a flourishing place. However, when Qin Wendian stood on the roof of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, he discovered that the entire Medicine Sovereign Valley was in ruins. Numerous majestic buildings had been destroyed and there were many cracks on the ground. The entire place was deathly silent. This once glorious holy land had now become a land of death that no one could enter. His silhouette flickered as he landed on an ancient peak. This was the place where he once lived with Qingqing. But now, the lush greenery here had already withered away, with no signs of life. Qin Wentian's countenance was extremely calm, yet his heart was incomparably cold. The Medicine Sovereign Valley had been destroyed. To be able to destroy the Medicine Sovereign Valley, there was no doubt that the culprit wasn't a local power of the royal sacred sect. It was an external power. Outside the Medicine Sovereign Valley, silhouettes flickered as they approached. Each and every one of them was extremely powerful, possessing a cultivation base at the celestial phenomenon realm. The spectators from afar all shuddered as they stared at these experts. They are from the Star River Association. Who would still dare to enter the Medicine Sovereign Valley? Truly courting death. The Star River Association has already given the order to hunt down the survivors of the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Anyone who dares to step into the Medicine Sovereign Valley shall be killed without mercy. Yet there are still people who dare to go there? They must be tired of living. The spectators from afar discussed, their voices all drifting into the ears of Qin Wendian. Right now, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he arrived outside the Medicine Sovereign Valley, staring at the experts who had just arrived. The Star River Association destroyed the Medicine Sovereign Valley and was even hunting down the survivors? Qingqing. Qin Wendian closed his eyes, only to see that the group of experts had already surrounded them. Their cold gazes stared at Qin Wendian and Purgatory as they icily spoke, "Give me a reason not to kill you." "You guys are from the Star River Association?" Qin Wendian, whose eyes were still closed, asked. Those people frowned, only to hear Qin Wendian continuing, "Is the Medicine Sovereign still here?" "You are courting death." One of them coldly spoke. However, at this moment, Qin Wendian opened his eyes as a terrifying cold light erupted forth. In an instant, a stifling pressure bore down on them, causing the countenances of the group of experts to drastically change. They felt an irresistible pressure bearing down on them as they trembled. "Sir, who are you?" "I'm asking you a question." Qin Wendian took a step forward, and as his foot landed, a scream of agony rang out. The heart of the leftmost cultivator was directly shattered, and a look of terror could be seen on his face as his body softly fell from the air. The faces of the others instantly turned as pale as paper. However, Qin Wendian continued, "Is the Medicine Sovereign still alive?" "I have no idea." The Medicine Sovereign is heavily injured and is currently fleeing for his life. I don't know if he is dead or alive. One of the experts didn't dare to speak after being stared at by Qin Wendian. "What about Mo Qingqing, the disciple of the Medicine Sovereign?" Qin Wendian asked again. "I have no idea." That person shook his head. "Senior, who are you exactly?" "Our Star River Association is now the ruler of this particle world. Even immortal Foundation existences wouldn't be able to contend against us." "Senior, please don't misunderstand." That person knew that his life was in the hands of Qin Wendian. Although he admitted defeat, he didn't forget to use the Star River Association to pressure Qin Wendian. Experts are as common as the clouds. The Star River Association knows that the Medicine Sovereign Valley once led an army of Immortal Foundation experts to destroy the Royal Sacred Sect. However, even if those experts are present, they still wouldn't be able to shake my Star River Association. No one can go against the prestige of our Star River Association. That expert coldly spoke, his tone hardening by several degrees. Qin Wentian's entire body turned cold. He turned and stepped out as he coldly spoke, "Kill!" As the sound of his voice faded, a surge of immortal might gushed forth from behind him. Numerous beams of life-reaping sword light appeared in the air, slashing downwards. The bodies of the experts from the Star River Association trembled violently as fresh blood sprayed from their wounds. Their bodies fell from the sky. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.